Chapter 700. Life. The Emperor was stunned like he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. Whose life do you want to save? I have the best medical resources in the world that can help you. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. Since the imperial tutor was the one who poisoned her, then did the Emperor have an antidote? Seeing Tang Zheng hesitate, the Emperor knew that he had found the right antidote. He continued, life is important. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to bring her back to life, right? Why don't you think of a way to save her? Tang Zheng's eyes turned cold. Do you know about the Jiu poison? What is the Jiu poison? The Emperor blurted out. However, he realized something and immediately changed his words. Jiu poison, right? Of course I know about it. I have the antidote. Tang Zheng shook his head. His eyes turned cold. You don't even know about the Jiu poison and you still want to lie to me. The Emperor really did not know about the Jiu poison. However, he was not willing to give up on this chance. He impatiently said, although I don't know about the Jiu poison, I can send people to investigate. I will definitely find the antidote. Tang Zheng shook his head. Even if he found the imperial tutor and used the Emperor's life to threaten him, the imperial tutor might not do anything. After all, the conflict between the two sides had escalated to an unprecedented level. It was a life-and-death situation. They wanted to see the other side die, so why would they save someone? Tang Zheng tossed these unrealistic thoughts to the back of his mind and looked at the Emperor expressionlessly. The Emperor realized that something was wrong. He used all his strength to lie in front of Tang Zheng and said, I am the ruler of a country. I can fulfill any of your wishes as long as you ask. It's too late. Back then when you invaded Huaxia, did you spare the lives of those who begged you? No. You created so many massacres and now you refuse to admit it. You even changed the history books. You are the most despicable people in the world. You still want to live in this world? Impossible. Tang Zheng's answer was resolute and decisive, cutting off all hope for the Emperor to survive. He raised his head once more and looked at Tang Zheng with disdain. If you kill me, the island nation and Huaxia will fall into war. You will drag both countries into an irrecoverable situation. You will be the sinner of history. Tang Zheng laughed disapprovingly. Haha, you really think too highly of yourself. You also think too highly of the island nation. Let me tell you, Huaxia is not the same as before. It is no longer the weak country of a few decades ago. Huaxia is strong and has long stood tall in the world. On the contrary, it is your island nation that has always been living in arrogance and wants to start another war. I will wait and see. When the time comes, I will let your country have a taste of Huaxia. The Emperor's expression kept changing. Shame, anger, unsightly, and anger intertwined. He stared viciously at Tang Zheng and shouted hysterically, there will be a day when the island nation's juniors will complete the unfinished business of the island nation's juniors. We will once again set foot on your land, burn, kill, and rob. We will make your Huaxia people be slaves for generations to come. The Emperor had already fallen into madness and was shouting non-stop. There was no anger on Tang Zheng's face. He only felt that this person was too pitiful. He had lived in delusion for his entire life. Could such a thing happen? Absolutely impossible. When you go to hell, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. There will be a day when your island nation will suffer 100 times, 1,000 times the pain that was inflicted on Huaxia. Tang Zheng finished coldly. Shua. His hand rose and the sword fell. The Emperor's head fell to the ground and rolled far away like a rubber ball. The screams of the island nation people were getting closer and closer. Tang Zheng nodded to Xiao Bai and said, Xiao Bai, burn this place. Xiao Bai nodded and jumped into the air. Flames spewed out from his small mouth and instantly covered all the palaces. The Kokyo was completely turned into a sea of fire. The reinforcements who rushed over were trapped in the sea of fire and fled madly. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai left the Kokyo, leaving behind the raging fire behind them. That night, the island nation was not peaceful. The world was shaken. Even if the island nation wanted to cover it up, there was no way. This was because the news had already spread on the internet. There were pictures, videos, and everything else. Among them, There was even a blurred image of Tang Zheng's back. He stood in the middle of the raging fire with a sword in one hand and a small child standing on his shoulder. He was peerless and independent. The world was shocked. Many people began to search for the identity of this assassin. Was it someone from the island nation or someone else? Most people did not know. Of course, the news of the emperor's death spread like the plague. The Kokyo and the emperor were completely finished by this assassin. The island nation people immediately hated this assassin to the bone. As for the people of other countries, their feelings were much more complicated. Every country announced that they had nothing to do with this matter. Moreover, they righteously condemned such an irresponsible and vile action. Huaxia was no exception. It was one of the countries with the harshest words. However, that picture had already been placed on the conference table of Huaxia's higher-ups. As long as one was familiar with Tang Jing, it was not difficult to recognize him from this picture. Especially Xiao Bai's figure, it was too obvious. A man, a sword, and an animal. This combination, in this world, was probably only Tang Zheng alone. When Xu Yingtian held this picture, he almost fell to the ground in fright. His hands trembled and he almost could not hold the picture steadily. His eyes stared straight at the back of that figure and said nervously, "This brat, why can't he stop at all? Is he really going to start a third world war?" Before he could contact Tang Zheng, he was informed to attend a meeting. When he entered the meeting room and saw the people attending, his heart could not help but beat faster. These people were all big shots that could only be seen on TV. They were a group of people with the highest authority in Huaxia. A word from each of them would affect the country's development strategy and the livelihood of thousands of families. Of course, Xu Yingtian knew these people. Due to his special position, he had interacted with these people before. However, seeing so many people sitting together, he suddenly had an ominous premonition. Something big must have happened. What big thing could happen in the middle of the night? Of course, it was the neighboring island nation. His eyes were very sharp and he immediately saw a picture on the conference table. Wasn't that a picture of Tang Zheng's back? The raging fire set off his tall and straight figure. He was awe-inspiring and had a natural power. He could even feel a murderous aura coming from the picture. Dong dong dong. Another series of footsteps sounded. Xu Yingtian saw a person at a glance and his heart could not help but skip a beat. He was actually paying attention to this matter. This person had a square face, thick eyebrows, big eyes, a strong back and a strong waist. He had a majestic aura and there was a strong sense of power between his brows. Xu Yingtian's gaze went past this person and immediately landed on another person. In that instant, the ominous premonition in his heart grew stronger. Xing Feng, why is he beside him? The Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau had always been competing with each other. After experiencing several heavy blows from Tang Zheng, the Dragon Group had calmed down a lot. Due to the dissatisfaction of some of the higher-ups, the Dragon Group had also restrained themselves and even kept a low profile. But now that Xu Yingtian saw the helmsman of the Dragon Group, Xing Feng, standing beside this person, the ominous feeling grew stronger. His gaze turned and immediately landed on the picture again. An idea came to his mind and cold sweat flowed down his head like a waterfall. This picture was submitted by the Dragon Group. The Dragon Group's intelligence system is really getting better and better. In the past, this kind of thing was done by the National Security Bureau. But this time, the Dragon Group had taken over the responsibility. The National Security Bureau would be in a passive situation and leave an impression of incompetence in the eyes of the higher-ups. In the future, the Dragon Group would definitely obtain more resources and develop faster. It would definitely not be a good thing for the National Security Bureau. Xing Feng also raised his head and looked over. When their eyes met, Xing Feng's eyes were filled with a smug smile. There was even a hint of ridicule. Xu Yingtian snorted inwardly and became alert. He was afraid that tonight would not be easy. When the others saw this person, they all stood up. This person stretched his hand out and gestured for everyone to take a seat. Everyone waited for him to take a seat before they took their seats. Xing Feng, explain the situation. This person said in a deep voice. Xing Feng's expression turned cold as he said, Tonight, a shocking matter happened in our neighboring island nation. The emperor and the imperial palace were completely destroyed and turned into a pile of ashes. The mastermind behind all of this is the person in the picture. Everyone immediately looked at the picture before them. Someone narrowed his eyes and looked at it for a moment before he said, "It's just a back view. I can't tell who it is." Xing Feng seemed to have expected such an answer as he mysteriously smiled. Those who aren't familiar with him naturally won't be able to tell. But those who are familiar with him will be able to recognize him with a single glance. Everyone's interest was piqued as they asked in surprise, "You're saying that you can already confirm the identity of this person?" Xing Feng purposely kept them in suspense as he turned to look at Xu Yingtian and said, "Chief Xu, you should be the one to answer this question, right?" Xu Yingtian was unhappy in his heart. He wished that he could shoot Xing Feng. Xing Feng was purposely digging a hole for him to jump in, but he had no choice but to jump in. If he did not speak the truth, the consequences would be even more severe. Thus, he seriously looked at the picture and said, "We have also collected this information and are about to report it to the higher-ups. As for this person, we have already determined his identity." "Oh, who is it?" Everyone was curious as to who this fierce person was. Could it be someone from a terrorist organization? Tang Zheng. Xu Yingtian took a deep breath and spat out 2 words. "This name seems a little familiar. It also seems to be the name of our Hua Xia people." Someone muttered. The smile in Xing Feng's eyes deepened as he said, "Chief Xu, since you have already determined the identity of the other party, then continue speaking." Xu Yingtian knew that he could not avoid it, so he said truthfully, "This person is from Hua Xia." Wow! Immediately, many people were stunned. Even though they had experienced countless big battles and major events, they were still shocked by this news. A person from Hua Xia burned the royal family of an island nation to ashes. That was not enough, he even killed the emperor. Chapter 701. The group of big shots looked at each other with mixed feelings. They were shocked beyond words by this news. Someone exclaimed as if he had just woken up from a dream, "I finally remember that name, Tang Zheng. Isn't he the rising star?" Xing Feng looked at Xu Yingtian meaningfully and added with a smile, "Not only that, he is also a special consultant of the National Security Bureau." This sentence immediately stirred up the nerves of the others, especially the few big shots, who immediately realized the awkwardness of Tang Zheng's clone. Tang Zheng had an official status, and he was also a consultant of the National Security Bureau. That would completely change the meaning of the matter. His personal actions would rise to official actions. This would cause friction between the two countries, and it would be seen as a very serious act of sabotage, or even an act of aggression. The big shots couldn't help but sit up straight, and their faces became unprecedentedly serious. They looked at Xu Yingtian with unfriendly gazes. "Director Xu, what is your explanation?" Xu Yingtian felt bitter in his heart, and had to explain, "Tang Zheng is indeed a consultant of the National Security Bureau, but this action is his personal action." "Hihi, is that so? This is your one-sided statement. Do you think the island nation will believe it?" Xing Feng asked with a fake smile. Everyone frowned at the same time, because the answer was self-evident. The island nation obviously wouldn't believe it. "Xu Yingtian, you are messing around. Gathering this kind of person to join the National Security Bureau, and he is even a consultant. Is this a consultant who is here to cause trouble?" Someone couldn't help but slap the table and said angrily, "Xu Yingtian has helped us a lot. The emperor's brother fell into our hands because of him. In addition, he has made many contributions, and his performance is very outstanding." Xu Yingtian earnestly said good things for Tang Zheng. "Mph. So what if we have some achievements? The mess we made this time is much more serious than those trivial achievements. How do you think we should deal with the island nation if they hold us accountable?" Xing Feng asked with an unkind expression. Xu Yingtian glared fiercely at Xing Feng. Xing Feng's lips curled up into a sinister smile. Xu Yingtian gnashed his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. He could only say, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir." Today, why would the Hua Xia fear an island nation? "Haha, easy for you to say." Xing Feng smiled as he continued, "Everyone, listen to his irresponsible words. He's trying to drag the country into the fire pit. For such a person to still be in charge of the National Security Bureau, a national weapon, was a blasphemy to the country and an extremely irresponsible approach. One day, he will bring a bigger disaster and drag the country into a state of eternal damnation." Some people nodded their heads in agreement, while others looked hesitant. Xu Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He finally understood Xing Feng's intention. He wanted to use this incident to remove Xu Yingtian from his position as the director of the National Security Agency. This way, he would be able to get rid of a big problem. Xu Yingtian's expression turned cold. How could he give in so easily? He retorted, "I'm a soldier of the country. Why would I do such a foolish thing?" "Xing Feng, don't judge others by your own standards." Xing Feng did not back down and said, "This matter concerns the security of the country, so it's not a small matter. It doesn't matter if I judge others by my own standards. What's important is that your people have made a huge mess and put the country into a passive and unfavorable situation. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you should take responsibility for it." Many people looked at Xu Yingtian with burning eyes. It was self-evident that they had already chosen to believe Xing Feng. Cough. Suddenly, the person sitting at the top coughed. Everyone immediately fell silent and looked at him. That person looked deeply at Xu Yingtian and said, "The most important thing now is to find a solution. When the island nation recovers, they will definitely hold you accountable." Everyone looked at Xu Yingtian. This was a hot potato. If it wasn't handled well, it would hurt the country's dignity. But if it was handled well, it wouldn't be a good thing to announce. Xing Feng looked at Xu Yingtian with a fake smile. Xu Yingtian was helpless and could only accept this hot potato. He raised his neck and volunteered, "I'm willing to reduce the impact of this matter to the lowest." "Good, you have guts. As the chief of the National Security Bureau, you must have such guts. Otherwise, how can you protect the safety of the country and its citizens?" That person praised. Xu Yingtian sighed in relief. Since that person had said those words, it meant that there was still a way to remedy this matter. So he wouldn't be stripped of his position right now. Disappointment flashed in Xing Feng's eyes. However, he wasn't discouraged. Xu Yingtian was deeply rooted in the country, and it wasn't something that could be taken down in a short period of time. Everything had to be done step by step. There was bound to be a straw that broke the camel's back, and he just had to wait and see. Furthermore, the moment Tang Zheng returns to the country, immediately take him under control. That person's expression changed as he coldly gave out an order. Xu Yingtian's heart skipped a beat. He immediately explained, "Tang Zheng is a rare talent, and he definitely doesn't have any bad intentions." Just when he wanted to continue, the other party had already waved his hand and stood up. The others also stood up and sent him off with their gazes before leaving the conference room one after another. Xing Feng did not leave. Instead, he looked at Xu Yingtian across the conference table. The smile on Xing Feng's face gradually blossomed as he proudly said, "You've always treated Tang Zheng as a treasure, and you've always protected him. Now you know how to regret it, right? He's a troublemaker, a ticking time bomb. I advise you to obediently hand him over to me, and I might even put in a good word for you for the sake of our relationship." Xu Yingtian remained unmoved as he coldly looked at the other party and retorted, "You want to see me make a fool of myself, right? You want to remove me from my position so that your dragon group can slowly nibble away at the National Security Bureau? Xing Feng, let me tell you, no way." Xing Feng wasn't afraid as he blinked his eyes and confidently said, "Then let's wait and see." "That's right, you'll only have a chance to continue playing with me if you pass this hurdle. Otherwise, you'll be completely out of the game." Xu Yingtian coldly snorted and left without saying a word. After returning to the National Security Bureau, he sat down on a chair and fell into deep thought. After a long time, his eyes turned cold as he sat up straight and dialed a number. "Hello, Tang Zheng." Xu Yingtian went straight to the point. "You've caused me a big mess again. What's the situation over there?" Tang Zheng was on his way back to his residence when his satellite phone rang. He heard this question as soon as he picked it up. The imperial palace is destroyed, the emperor is dead, and the imperial tutor's fate is unknown. The imperial tutor's residence is also almost destroyed, Tang Zheng said indifferently. After the massacre, his anger had mostly dissipated, and his voice became calm again. Imperial tutor, the imperial tutor's residence? Xu Yingtian was slightly stunned. The imperial tutor's residence was too mysterious, and the information sent back didn't mention the situation of the imperial tutor's residence. Yes, many things have happened in the imperial tutor's residence, and many new discoveries have been made. As for what will happen in the end, it's not clear for the time being. Tang Zheng said truthfully. What happened? Xu Yingtian asked curiously. It's hard to explain in a few words. I'll talk to you in detail when we go back. Tang Zheng didn't intend to hide the matter of Orokai. It was related to Hua Xia's past and the future. It was even related to the 100 Faces Star Lord. It was wise to let the authorities know about this matter. Xu Yingtian really wanted to ask about this matter, but in the end, he held back and changed the topic. You've done such a big thing, which will definitely cause the island nation to be on full alert. You should take advantage of the fact that the other side hasn't completed a comprehensive layout and leave this place. Otherwise, you'll really be unable to escape. Tang Zheng didn't think so. He had Gui Chen Sui, so it was easy for him to leave this island nation. No one could stop him. Thank you. I'll look for you when I go back in a few days. That's all for now. Tang Zheng had already seen the small building and quickly hung up the phone. Only Xu Yingtian was left holding the phone. Finally, he could only sigh helplessly. Tang Zheng looked up and saw that there was no one on the balcony. His heart thumped. You must wait for me, you must. Then, he rushed into the small building like the wind and asked loudly, Where is Marshall? The bedroom on the second floor. Whiz. He came to the bedroom door. The door was ajar, and Marshall was lying on the bed. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Lan Yu was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at Marshall with red eyes. How is he? Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask. Lan Yu turned his head and said, You're finally back. She's still waiting for you. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly walked to the bedside and held Marshall's hand. He found that her eyes were still closed and she was on the verge of death. Marshall, I'm back. I've already avenged you. The emperor is dead and the imperial palace has already turned to ashes. Tang Zheng said gently. Lan Yu was slightly startled. He never thought that Tang Zheng would go out and do such a shocking thing. He patted his shoulder and said with relief, If Marshall knows about your intentions, he will definitely be very touched. Tang Zheng squeezed out a bitter smile from the corner of his mouth. Stay with her for a while. I'll go out first. Lan Yu gave the time to the two of them. He gently closed the door and walked out. Tang Zheng took the opportunity to sit at the head of the bed and held her in his arms. Her body was still soft and supple. Looking at her face in a daze, Tang Zheng couldn't help but feel sorrowful. He had the urge to cry out loud. Marshall, if the heavens give me another chance, I will definitely protect you well and accompany you forever. I will definitely not be impatient with you again, Tang Zheng muttered to himself. Hey! Suddenly, his eyes turned cold as he stared at her throat. His eyes revealed a strange light. Her throat started to move, as if something was crawling up her throat. It was very obvious. What's going on? He was shocked and immediately activated his innate qi into Marshall's body. In that instant, he knew everything about her body like the back of his hand. Chapter 702. This was truly inconceivable. Marshall's heart was beating even more vigorously, and the most important thing was that the GU worm that was wrapped around her heart had disappeared. Of course, the GU worm could not disappear into thin air. Instead, it had moved to the throat. Tang Zheng saw Marshall's movements, which meant that the GU worm was crawling along her throat towards her mouth. What was going on? Didn't the imperial tutor say that the GU worm would devour Marshall's heart? But now, the situation was clearly different. Hey! Suddenly, Tang Zheng's expression turned cold as he discovered something strange in Marshall's mouth. The GU worm's tentacles had reached out from her throat and were greedily sucking the blood in her mouth. This blood was clearly not Marshall's blood but had extended from her lips. Tang Zheng was slightly startled and immediately came to a realization. He exclaimed in shock, "I know, this is my blood." Previously, he had kissed Marshall once. At that time, he had bitten his lips and blood had seeped into Marshall's mouth. However, he did not expect that the blood would have such a strong attraction to the Jiyu worm. It had actually lured it out of Marshall's heart. This was like seeing a trace of light in the darkness. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he bit his finger and opened Marshall's mouth. He dripped his blood into her mouth. Immediately, the Jiyu worm seemed to have gone crazy. Its tentacles quickly rushed over. Not just one, but several of them reached into Marshall's chest and greedily sucked the blood. Tang Zheng finally understood the whole story. He had the 9-yang saint body and his blood was different from ordinary people. The Jiyu worm especially liked his blood, so it was lured to his throat. "Come out, come out." Tang Zheng seemed to be chanting a spell, hoping to lure the Jiyu worm out of his throat. However, things did not go as he wished. The Jiyu worm only stretched out its tentacles but did not crawl out of the throat. It seemed that it knew that it would be dangerous if it crawled out of the throat. Damn it, this little bug is actually so cunning. Tang Zheng was greatly disappointed. He watched as the tentacles sucked his blood but the Jiyu worm did not come out. Tang Zheng tried to stretch his finger to his throat. The blood stimulated the Jiyu worm to become even more frenzied. All of its tentacles stretched out and wrapped around Tang Zheng's finger, sucking the blood without restraint. Hiss! Tang Zheng felt a sharp pain, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. He controlled his fingers to slowly move backwards, trying to pull out the Jiyu worm. Well, suddenly, a painful murmur caused Tang Zheng's entire body to be startled, only to see Marshall's originally calm face reveal a painful expression. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked. He quickly ran his real qi to investigate. F***ck. Tang Zheng could not help but curse. Why did the Jiyu worm grow so many thorns and forcefully grab Marshall's throat? The Jiyu worm grew several thorns and grabbed Marshall's throat, resisting Tang Zheng's pulling force. This Jiyu worm has really gained intelligence. Tang Zheng turned pale with fright. If he could not get it out of his throat, then everything would be meaningless. He could not just let it continue to suck blood, right? Then wouldn't Tang Zheng die from all of his blood being sucked dry? He had to think of another way. Tang Zheng quickly freed his finger from the tentacles. He frowned and seemed to be deep in thought. The Jiyu worm discovered that the delicious taste had disappeared and started to squirm. Marshall's body immediately twitched again. His muscles twisted and his face revealed a painful expression. No, this Jiyu worm has gone crazy. Tang Zheng was helpless. He could only immediately put his hand into Marshall's mouth. All of the tentacles immediately wrapped around his hand. Wu stopped twitching and regained his composure, but Tang Zheng had a bitter expression on his face. Ouch! Tang Zheng screamed. He felt the tentacles reach into his skin and muscles. The intense pain caused Tang Zheng to involuntarily frown. He quickly focused his mind to check the situation. Ah! He could not help but cry out in alarm, only to see that the Jiyu worm had disappeared, completely disappearing from Marshall's body. Damn it, where did it go this time? Tang Zheng stomped his foot. This thing would not disappear into thin air for no reason. It must have gone somewhere else. Before he could figure it out, he saw the blood vessels on his arm bulge up high. Then, with lightning speed, the bulge moved to his shoulder and went straight for his heart. What happened? Tang Zheng was shocked and quickly checked his body. He didn't know if he didn't see it, but when he saw it, he was really shocked. The Jiyu worm actually shrunk and drilled into his blood vessels. Then, it started to swim towards his heart. No, I can't let it come to my heart. Wouldn't I be controlled by it? Tang Zheng's face turned pale with fright as he subconsciously thought. He quickly circulated his true qi, wanting to intercept the Jiyu worm halfway. However, the Jiyu worm's reaction was faster than his. It had already arrived at his heart. All of its tentacles expanded and instantly wrapped around his heart. Tang Zheng felt his heart tighten. There was a sense of suffocation. Moreover, There was a sharp pain in his chest. His tilde Tang Zheng sucked in a breath of cold air. His mind was shaken, and his eyes could not help but reveal a trace of despair. This damned Jiyu worm preferred his blood, so it did not hesitate to give up on Marshall and drilled into his body in an attempt to completely devour his heart and blood. Don't even think about succeeding. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and shouted. His true qi immediately wrapped around the Jiyu worm. The Jiyu worm knew that its nemesis had arrived, so it hurriedly wrapped itself around Tang Zheng's heart. Tang Zheng felt that his breathing was becoming difficult as he clutched his chest and staggered backwards, only stopping when he hit the wall with a peng. Tang Zheng felt that his blood was rapidly flowing out. Even his life was rapidly leaving his body. In short, the signs of death had arrived. He stared deeply at the unconscious Marshall and said with relief, "Marshall, it's good that you're alive." His consciousness gradually became blurry. He felt as if he was about to float into the clouds and fall into a bottomless valley. In short, this feeling was very mysterious, but it was not good at all. Bang bang, bang bang. Tang Zheng's heart started to beat rapidly. His speed did not slow down at all. Tang Zheng suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if a soul-stirring light flashed through his eyes. "I'm awake again." Tang Zheng's voice changed. It was heavy and dignified, causing one's heart to tremble in fear. This brat is really too weak. A small Jiyu worm actually almost caused him to lose his life. Caillou's heart had awakened. This voice was Caillou's voice, filled with killing intent. Back then, in the crater in the northeast, it was because of the awakening of Caillou's heart that Tang Zheng was able to successfully absorb the dragon soul and defeat the Heavenly Emperor's brother. This time, Caillou's heart was attacked by the Jiyu worm. Caillou's consciousness had finally recovered. When he saw Tang Zheng's terrible situation, he could not help but complain. "Mph, just a small Jiyu worm. Then use it as my nourishment," Caillou's heart said casually. As soon as he finished speaking, Caillou's heart emitted a bloody mist, which instantly enveloped the Jiyu worm. As if the Jiyu worm had seen its nemesis, it started to twist crazily, trying to break free from the restraints of Caillou's heart. "Heh, you want to escape from such a small matter? Dream on," Caillou's heart said in disdain. Before he finished speaking, the Jiyu worm started to struggle. It kept twisting and waving its tentacles. Bang! Suddenly, the Jiyu worm exploded, turning into a cloud of mist that enveloped Caillou's heart. After a while, the mist completely seeped into Caillou's heart. Everything returned to normal. This kid's character is not bad. He is decisive in killing and has a firm heart. With some nurturing, he will be a promising talent. It's just that his cultivation is too weak. It's simply a disgrace to the reputation of the nine-yang saint body. How can a person with the nine-yang saint body only have such a little cultivation? Yamata no Orokai has come out. Even the 100 Transformations Star Lord has come. This world is becoming more and more interesting. I really look forward to recovering my strength and rebuilding my glory. Caillou's heart sighed. "Tang Zheng, what's wrong?" Lan Yu's voice came from outside the door. She had heard the commotion in the room, so she had rushed over. Caillou's heart stopped talking. The moment Lan Yu opened the door, everything returned to normal. Tang Zheng's eyes also opened at this moment. "Nothing," Tang Zheng replied. Lan Yu heaved a sigh of relief and said, "I heard your cries of pain and thought something had happened. How is Marshall?" Tang Zheng's gaze turned and landed on Marshall. He saw that her expression was calm, like a sleeping baby. "She's fine." Lan Yu was startled and almost burst into tears. She wiped the corner of her eyes and walked over with large strides, saying, her face is much rosier." "Ah, Tang Zheng, why is your face so pale?" Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat as he stammered, "I." Before he could finish his sentence, he was dumbstruck as he looked at his heart in disbelief. "Where's the Jiyu worm?" The Jiyu worm had disappeared, leaving behind a strong heart that was beating rhythmically. There was nothing else going on in his body. What's going on? Why did the Jiyu worm disappear? Even though Tang Zheng was resourceful, he could not guess what was going on. Lan Yu frowned and asked suspiciously, "Jiyu worm? What happened to the Jiyu worm?" Tang Zheng immediately pulled open the clothes on his chest. His skin was smooth and there was nothing wrong with it. Lan Yu finally saw through the clues and asked anxiously, Tang Zheng, don't lie to me. What happened to the ground? Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. Joy appeared on his face as he said, Marshall is fine, the GU worm in her body has completely disappeared. Ah! Lan Yu was shocked and cried out in alarm, how could this be? How did you do it? Tang Zheng guessed that the GU worm must have disappeared in his body. As for how it disappeared, he did not know. However, he still told her about how the GU worm absorbed his blood and then accidentally drilled into his body. Lan Yu's heart trembled when she heard this, her eyelids twitched, and her expression was filled with pain. She could not help but hold on to Tang Zheng's hand and said emotionally, Tang Zheng, you silly child, you almost harmed yourself, do you know that? Tang Zheng felt the other party's heartfelt concern and said, am I not fine? Chapter 703. As soon as Lan Yu finished speaking, Marshall let out a murmur and faintly woke up. Tang Zheng and Lan Yu were overjoyed. They immediately surrounded him and asked with concern, Marshall, how do you feel? Marshall opened his eyes with difficulty, looked at Tang Zheng, and then at Lan Yu. He was wild with joy. Mistress, I see you again. Lan Yu stroked Marshall's hair, his nose sour, and said emotionally, silly child, for us to travel thousands of miles to Island Nation, you almost lost your life. Marshall is useless. I was unable to save Master, Mistress, and all my fellow sect members. Marshall said in shame, his eyes wet. Lan Yu's face turned serious as he said, who dares to say that you're useless? I'll beat him up until his mother doesn't even recognize him. Marshall broke into a smile and said, where are Master and the others? Lan Yu's expression stiffened as he comforted her, don't worry, the others are all outside. As for your master, he still has some matters to attend to. You just escaped danger, so you need to rest well. Marshall revealed a puzzled expression and said, I only remember what happened before I fainted. Who saved me? Lan Yu smiled as he looked at Tang Zheng. Marshall's gaze turned as he asked, you saved me? Of course, out of all of us, only he has the ability to do so. He almost lost his life because of it. Lan Yu said. Marshall's eyes revealed a moved expression, and a blush flashed across his face. He looked at Tang Zheng in a daze and said, thank you. Tang Zheng's face also blossomed with a brilliant smile. He subconsciously held her hand and said, this is what I should do. You young people take your time to chat. I'll be leaving first. Lan Yu smiled meaningfully and even winked mysteriously at Marshall before closing the door and leaving. There were only 2 people left in the room, and they immediately fell into silence. The 2 of them looked at each other, then Marshall hurriedly looked away. She had a clear feeling that the world after waking up was completely different from before, especially Tang Zheng's gaze, which was even softer and filled with deep affection. This was something that had never happened before, causing her heart to palpitate and her heart to race. Tang Zheng coughed and broke the silence. Are you tired? Do you want to rest for a while? Not tired. Marshall blurted out, looked at him, and said, in order to save me, you almost sacrificed yourself. It's not that exaggerated, Tang Zheng said lightly. But the more he said this, the more certain Wu was that this was the case. He couldn't help but hold his hand. Tang Zheng's heart warmed, and he also held her hand tightly. Their eyes met, and this time, they did not avoid each other's gaze. The 2 pairs of eyes that were close to each other silently communicated, transmitting each other's feelings. The atmosphere was changing bit by bit, and a mysterious feeling was brewing in the air. Tang Zheng bent down and gently kissed her lips. Wu did not resist, but instead closed his eyes and quietly felt it, as if his heart was about to melt. The things that the 2 of them had done in the past were also unable to resist the magic of this kiss. It was so beautiful that it made one's heart bloom with joy. Every pore on one's body seemed to open, giving one a kind of limitless power. Their lips parted. Tang Zheng looked at Wu, who was so close to him that he could almost see the fine hair on her face and feel her breathing. Wu had her eyes closed the entire time. She knew that Tang Zheng was staring at her, so she was too embarrassed to open her eyes. She didn't know when she had become so shy. She sensed her own thoughts, and the blush on her face became even redder. She was like a ripe apple, tender and alluring. Rest well. Tang Zheng did not push his luck, and said gently, I'll be outside, if there's anything, call me. Wu Weiwei opened her eyes and narrowed them into slits. She nodded her head and watched Tang Zheng leave. Then, she let out a long breath. The sweet feeling lingered in her heart for a long time. Unknowingly, she fell asleep with a smile on her face. Outside the house, Lan Yu looked at Tang Zheng with a smile and said, Why don't you accompany me for a while longer? She's a little tired. I'll let her rest first. There'll be plenty of time in the future. Tang Zheng said. Marshall is a good girl. She will remember your kindness. Tang Zheng felt ashamed of his inferiority. Most of the time, it was Wu who treated her better, while he felt that Wu was dispensable. He could summon her and leave her at any time. Is he back? Tang Zheng changed the topic. Lan Yu looked out the window at the night sky, shook his head and said, We left clues for him along the way. He will follow the clues to find us. It's been so long, but he still hasn't found us. Will something happen to him? Tang Zheng couldn't help but worry. If he knew that you were so worried about him, he would definitely be very gratified. Lan Yu sighed. A hint of panic flashed past Tang Zheng's eyes. His feelings for his biological parents were already in a mess, and even he himself couldn't explain it clearly. Hearing Lan Yu's words, he felt a sense of panic. He quickly shifted his gaze and said, Do you need us to go find him? No need. He will have a way. You have to trust him. Lan Yu's gaze was firm. Tang Zheng was at his wit's end, and could only choose to believe in her judgment. At this moment, Wu Junshan was still in the Imperial Advisor's mansion, which was already surrounded by layers upon layers of troops. Although the Heavenly Emperor had died and the country had indeed fallen into chaos, they had still set up a certain emergency mechanism. After the emergency mechanism was activated, the various government orders were passed down in an orderly manner. First, a large number of troops surrounded the Imperial Palace and the Imperial Advisor's mansion, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. The army did not completely enter the Imperial Advisor's mansion. The Imperial Advisor's mansion occupied an extremely large area, and that small village was only a drop in the ocean. The larger area was the mountain and lake behind the village, and the mountain was even connected to the sea. Wu Junshan stood at the peak of the mountain. Half of the mountain had already been destroyed, and it was a complete mess. This was the result of the battle between Yamata no Orokai and the 100 Faces Star-Lord. It was terrifying, and it was almost impossible for an ordinary person to reach such a level. Wu Junshan's expression was cold, and his clothes were a little messy. There was still a trace of shock in his eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have imagined such a battle. Although he was an expert, he was still not strong enough to face these two tyrannical fellows. Master, let's go. In the darkness, an ethereal voice sounded. Wu Junshan was unmoved. He looked in the direction of the sea and said, What do you think the final result of their battle will be? Yamata no Orokai is still no match for the 100 Faces Star-Lord. Defeat is only a matter of time. So the 100 Faces Star-Lord will have the help of Yamata no Orokai? Wu Junshan frowned. This is something that can't be stopped. Shadow, the days ahead will only get more and more difficult. Wu Junshan sighed. If you hadn't stopped me, I'm afraid I would have disappeared from this world. Shadow, a martial scholar, was really like a shadow, following beside Wu Junshan. It was all thanks to the shadow that they were able to leave the martial organization so smoothly. This time, the shadow had helped Wu Junshan again. Wu Junshan could not remember how many times the shadow had helped him. It was as if the shadow had become a part of his body. Master, this is what I should do. The shadow calmly said. Let's go. We'll catch up with Lan Yu and leave this place. I have a feeling that the good days of the island nation are coming to an end. Wu Junshan said meaningfully. The two disappeared. In the ruins, a few stones moved, and a person came out, the imperial teacher. The imperial teacher was covered in dust and looked in a sorry state. He looked in the direction where Wu Junshan disappeared, and then looked in the direction of the sea. He muttered to himself, There is always someone better than you. Hu Ashia's famous saying is too accurate. Without a doubt, The imperial teacher used to be headstrong and arrogant. Although he did not think that he was the best in the world, he was very confident that he was one of the strongest people in the world. But after seeing this unprecedented battle, he realized that he was the frog at the bottom of the well. He only saw the blue sky above his head. Wu Junshan, the shadow beside him, and even his wife are all top-notch experts. Compared to them, even I am slightly inferior, not to mention that childlike multiform Star-Lord. Who is he? How can he have such terrifying strength? There was still a lingering fear between his brows. In front of 100 Change Star-Lord, he had no resistance at all. He was like an ant that could be easily squashed to death. How is the battle between God Orokai and 100 Change Star-Lord? He looked at the sea, but could not see anything clearly. Catcher. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and landed in the sea. Thick black clouds accumulated on the surface of the sea. Then, the rumbling of thunder sounded like a drum, deafening to the ears. This is their battle. The imperial teacher was frightened. Imperial preceptor. Suddenly, a figure appeared behind the imperial preceptor and knelt down with a thud. The imperial teacher turned around and saw his favorite disciple. He was pleasantly surprised. Junko, are you okay? Junko's face was as pale as paper. Her shoulders trembled as if she was terrified. She said in a trembling voice, Junko was lucky to escape. The others are dead. They died in the hands of that child. When Junko recalled that scene, her heart felt like it was going to jump out of her throat. She had never seen such a powerful person in her entire life. He didn't even need to touch them, and the others were killed without being able to resist. It was not a simple killing, but a massacre. The strong murderous aura emitted by the child's every movement made people unable to think of resisting. She had to overcome the fear in her heart with great difficulty to escape this calamity. The imperial teacher's expression did not change at all. He said lightly, I know, sacrifice is inevitable. Imperial teacher, we have to avenge them. Junko's eyes bloomed with flames of hatred as she said resolutely. The imperial teacher showed a self-mocking smile and said, Oh, revenge? He paused for a moment and said, There is nothing I can do. Junko had never seen the imperial teacher so dispirited. After she escaped, she did not see the great battle just now. So she did not understand the situation in front of her. It's over. Everything is settled. The imperial teacher said dispiritedly. As if to prove this sentence, the thunder and lightning on the sea stopped. Chapter 704. This aura made people have an impulse to kowtow. Junko looked at it with a pale face and asked, State Preceptor, what is that? The imperial advisor was silent, but his face became serious. Boom. Rivers and seas were overturned, and huge waves surged up on the surface of the sea. Junko subconsciously took a step back and exclaimed, Tsunami. State Preceptor was still motionless as he stared at the monstrous waves. Although Junko had the urge to run away, she stopped abruptly when she saw State Preceptor's tall and straight figure. The huge wave stopped in front of the mountain. The seawater was like a waterfall. With a splash, it fell into the sea, splashing water vapor all over the sky. It was like a rainstorm. A huge monster quietly revealed its true face. It was none other than Yamata no Orokai. However, the 8 heads of Yamata no Orokai were protected by a person standing at the top 100 faces. Although he was still dressed like a child, he looked down from above like a king looking down on the world. Obviously, as the imperial advisor expected, Yamata no Orokai had been subdued by 100 faces. Yamata no Orokai lowered its noble head. This was a world where the strong were respected, especially the creatures who came from the cultivation world. They understood the principle of the strong being respected and had a deeper understanding of the law of the jungle. If they didn't submit, they would die. Yamata no Orokai obviously didn't want to die, so it could only submit. The imperial advisor's face changed a few times, and the loss and pain in his eyes were self-evident. Although he had expected this result, he still had mixed feelings when he saw it with his own eyes. All these years, Yamata no Orokai had been respected by him as a god. In the long history, both the imperial advisor and the emperor respected Yamata no Orokai as a god, so it was called Yamata no Orokai. Deities were lofty and undefeatable. However, at this moment, it was proven that Yamata no Orokai was still a long way from being a god. It was because the imperial advisor and the emperor were frogs at the bottom of the well that they worshipped Yamata no Orokai as a god. This was equivalent to 100 faces slapping the imperial advisor in the face. He couldn't resist and could only raise his head to take it. Oh, this old man is quite interesting. He is a Grandmaster warrior. 100 faces said with interest. It was the first time he saw the imperial advisor. Yamata no Orokai said, "Master, this is the imperial advisor of the island nation. He is second only to one person." Haha, is that so? Is he really that powerful? The 100 Transformations Star Sovereign curled his lips into a brilliant smile. But this bright smile made Orochi's heart tremble. He hurriedly said, "That's just the nonsense of ordinary people. He is also your servant, Master. He is under your command." It seems that a Grandmaster martial artist can also be a servant and do some miscellaneous chores. 100 Faces Star Lord accepted Orochi's good intentions and said. Junko had already seen the appearance of the 100 Change Star Lord. Wasn't this the murderer who had killed countless of her fellow disciples? And what was that monster? Although Junko was a disciple of the Imperial Advisor, the existence of Yamata no Orokai was only known by the Imperial Advisor. Even if she was the Imperial Advisor's confidant, she definitely didn't know about Yamata no Orokai. Of course, she didn't understand the meaning of Yamata no Orokai. She was furious when she heard that the Imperial Advisor was reduced to a servant. The Imperial Advisor was the person she respected the most. How could he be insulted like this? She took a deep breath and stood up without a care for her own safety. She scolded, "Shut up, I won't allow you to insult the state preceptor." Silence. Dead silence. All eyes were focused on Junko. She felt as if a huge boulder was pressing down on her, and there was a suffocating feeling. But she gritted her teeth and held on like a strong little warrior. The Imperial Advisor's face was pale. He didn't expect Junko to be so bold. If he angered her, his life would be in danger. "Junko, shut up." The Imperial Advisor scolded and then respectfully said to Yamata no Orokai, "Yamata no Orokai, she is young and ignorant. Please don't lower yourself to her level." Yamata no Orochi's huge eyes seemed to have magic as he stared at Junko. Junko stubbornly raised her neck and looked at Yamata no Orokai face to face. Those huge eyes seemed to want to swallow her soul, causing her to feel fear and tremble from the bottom of her heart. "How dare you be disrespectful to my master and me? It's a capital offense," Yamata no Orokai suddenly said. The Imperial Advisor's body trembled. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He just looked at Junko with pity. The Imperial Advisor had made his decision. Since he couldn't go against it, he could only listen to the arrangement of fate and submit to the Zodiac Star Lord. Although he was extremely unwilling to do so, he had to do it in order to survive. He secretly comforted himself that perhaps it would be easier for him to achieve his previous goal after following the Zodiac Star Lord. He wanted to plead for Junko, but after seeing Yamata no Orochi's attitude, he decided to give up. He didn't want to take the risk. Junko was his disciple, but she was more important than his own life. Junko looked at the Imperial Advisor in disappointment. It wasn't because he didn't want to plead for her, but because of his cowardice. He actually submitted to the Zodiac Star Lord. Where did his usual pride go? Why was he so afraid of death? The high image of the Imperial Advisor in her heart instantly collapsed. She raised her head in despair, but she didn't lose her pride. She looked at the others with contempt and said, "Come on, kill me. Anyway, you have already killed the other disciples of the Imperial Advisor's residence. It doesn't matter if you kill one more." "Ha, interesting, interesting." Suddenly, a crisp applause broke the silence. The Zodiac Star Lord clapped his little hands with a mysterious smile on his face. "It's interesting to have such a person as a servant. There are too many spineless people like that. It's not rare. The rarer something is, the more valuable it is. This little girl is the rarest talent." The Zodiac Star Lord didn't hesitate to praise. "Little snake, I'll give that guy to you. After eating a master warrior, your cultivation will recover a little," the Zodiac Star Lord said. Hearing this, the state preceptor's expression changed drastically. He exclaimed in disbelief, "Don't kill me, I will obediently be your servant. I will never be disloyal." The Zodiac Star Lord didn't even look at him. All his attention was focused on Junko. He said, "Didn't I already tell you? There are spineless people everywhere. What use do I have for you?" After a pause, 3 words came out from the Zodiac Star Lord's mouth: "Eat him." The Imperial Advisor was desperate. He kept compromising, but it turned out to be the worst way. The Zodiac Star Lord didn't buy it. Instead, Junko was appreciated by the Zodiac Star Lord. This was really God's will. The Imperial Advisor wasn't a person who accepted his fate. When he heard the 3 words from the Zodiac Star Lord, his body flashed and turned into a stream of light, rushing out of the Imperial Advisor's residence. The Zodiac Star Lord still didn't hesitate to look at him. It was as if the Imperial Advisor's life and death didn't matter to him. Or, he knew that the Imperial Advisor couldn't escape. The huge tail of the Yamata no Orokai arrived first. The sound of the tail breaking through the air was loud, as if it was going to tear the air apart. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Imperial Advisor was swept across the waist and flew into the air. He let out a heart-wrenching scream as blood danced in the wind. Junko's heart was fiercely clenched. She wanted to help, but it was already too late. She could only watch as the Imperial Advisor flew in the air like a willow catkin. The huge tail was like a whip, dancing in the air and wrapped around the Imperial Advisor. The Imperial Advisor was suffocating, but he couldn't bear the pain. He roared and slapped the scales with both hands. Using all his strength, the strength of this slap could be said to be terrifying. With a loud bang, a piece of the scales was slapped off, bringing with it a dazzling stream of blood. "Roar! How dare you! I'm going to eat you!" Yamata no Orokai finally exploded in anger. Although it had pledged allegiance to the Zodiac Star Lord, it had always been high and mighty in front of the Imperial Advisor. Even now, it still maintained this condescending position. But the Imperial Advisor dared to attack it and even injured it. This was absolutely intolerable. The huge tail swung back, and the Imperial Advisor flew in the air. Before he could break free, a bloody mouth came towards him. A disgusting smell assaulted his face, almost suffocating the Imperial Advisor. His eyes were immediately filled with despair as he looked at the bloody mouth and long fangs that were getting closer and closer. The Imperial Advisor let out a heart-wrenching scream of unwillingness, and then, he fell into the mouth of Yamata no Orokai. The scream came to an abrupt end. The Imperial Advisor was bitten in half, and the sound of bones breaking was particularly clear in the dark night. It was also particularly ear-piercing, making people involuntarily shudder. Junko trembled and almost fainted. Watching her idol fall into the mouth of the monster, this visual impact almost made her collapse. If it wasn't for her extraordinary perseverance, she would have been scared out of her wits, but her body was already trembling uncontrollably. Catcher! Catcher! The crisp sound of bones breaking was incessant, and blood overflowed from the corner of Yamata no Orochi's bloody mouth. That was the Imperial Advisor's blood. After Yamata no Orokai swallowed, the Imperial Advisor completely disappeared from its mouth and entered its stomach, completing the journey of his life. Suddenly, Yamata no Orochi's eyes lit up instantly, like a searchlight in the dark night, emitting a breathtaking light. Turning its gaze, it swept towards Junko, and Junko subconsciously stepped back. "Don't be afraid, I won't kill you," 100 Faces Star Lord said patiently, like a strange uncle tricking a little girl. "Become my servant, and your life in the future will be 1,000 times, 10,000 times more interesting than now." Before his voice fell, he was already in front of Junko, but he didn't move. Instead, it was the head of Yamata no Orokai that carried him to Junko. He slowly stretched out a finger and pointed at Junko's forehead. Junko wanted to dodge, but found that she couldn't move at all. She was firmly locked by the other party's aura. Chapter 705. The finger of the 100 transformations star sovereign blossomed with a dazzling light, and this was the only light left in Junko's eyes. There was an explosion in her mind, and countless information flooded in, filling up every single one of her brain cells and nerves. Her pupils instantly enlarged. As a ninja, she could be regarded as a beginner in magic. Seeing this information, she was overjoyed and almost went crazy. She understood the value of these things too well. Didn't the state preceptor rack his brains to capture Tang Zheng for these things? Magic. The real Hua Xia magic, not the superficial ninjutsu. She felt that every word in her mind was so beautiful, exuding a charm that made her enchanted. Rumble. A burst of sound like the yellow river bursting the dike, the sound of the surging river suddenly sounded in her body. Her complexion greatly changed, and she quickly checked the condition of her body, only to see that the sound came from her meridians. At this moment, her meridians were like a big river, and the true qi flowing in them was like a river, surging and full of power. The true qi widened her meridians, which was conducive to storing more true qi. What made her even more ecstatic was that her cultivation was soaring rapidly. Her true body had reached the speed of a rocket, and her true qi was rising steadily, impulsively reaching one realm after another, which she didn't dare to dream of recently. Moreover, there seemed to be no end to it. She was so happy that she almost fainted. Why did such a good thing fall on her? In the past, she cultivated painstakingly, comprehending the sword in the sword forest, but it was not as good as this instant change. Her eyes couldn't help but fall on 100 Faces Star-Lord's face. That young face and thin body actually contained such a terrifying power. She couldn't help but gradually understand the state preceptor's feelings. It was not that he didn't dare to resist, but that there was no room for resistance. She was not afraid because she didn't know. Now that she finally experienced the horror of 100 Faces Star-Lord, she gradually felt awe in her heart. The finger left her forehead, and the true qi in her body stopped soaring. But for Junko, the current state was the peak that she had never been in before. The 100 Transformations Star Sovereign looked at her and said casually, "I helped you to reach the 9th grade of fasting, which is equivalent to the 9th grade of innate realm. The inner strength in your body has been completely dissolved and replaced with true qi, which is the foundation of a cultivator's cultivation. As for the Grandmaster realm, you need to comprehend it yourself. That way, you can gain more." 9th grade innate stage, 9th grade inedia. Junko sucked in a breath of cold air. She had never dreamed that she would reach such a realm so quickly. Moreover, it was not the 9th grade innate stage, but the 9th grade inedia stage. Although she had practiced ninjutsu before, she was still a martial artist and not a cultivator. That was because most of the power in her body was transformed from inner strength. However, it was different now. The 100 Faces Star-Lord used the enlightenment technique to dissolve the original inner strength in her body and used true qi to supplement it. Thus, she was completely transformed into a cultivator who could practice all kinds of profound and unfathomable spells. Without a doubt, Junko was overjoyed by this change. Although she had not tested it yet, she already felt that if she used the previous illusion technique, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. "From now on, you are my servant. I will teach you more powerful spells," the 100 Faces Star Sovereign said. Junko hesitated for a moment and acquiesced to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's words. Facing this kind of temptation and being intimidated by the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, she finally did not have the courage to refute and chose to compromise. She looked at the 100 Faces Star Sovereign and asked nervously, "Then when can I defeat Tang Zheng?" Tang Zheng is also at the 9th grade of fasting, but he has more spells and a divine weapon in hand. Of course, you are not his opponent now, but as long as you follow me, that day will not be too far away. Yes. Junko nodded heavily, and her eyes flashed with intense sparks. The Imperial Preceptor's residence was destroyed, and even the Imperial Preceptor's body was not left. Junko did not attribute all of this to the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, but to Tang Zheng. The fuse of all of this was Tang Zheng. If it were not for him, everything would be normal, and there would not be so many things at all. Therefore, she hated Tang Zheng to the bone, and wanted to eat his flesh and drink his blood. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign smiled and looked into the distance. From the mountain peak, he could see the situation outside the Imperial Preceptor's residence clearly. He narrowed his eyes slightly and patted Orochi's shoulder, saying, "Don't you want to increase your cultivation? Enjoy the delicious meal." Orochi heard this, and a terrifying cold light and murderous intent burst out from its eyes. The snake's tongue flickered, and its huge eyes stared into the distance. There were many soldiers there, and they surrounded the Imperial Preceptor's residence. They were armed and ready, and they did not know that misfortune was about to befall them. When they saw several figures floating down from the mountain peak in the distance, everyone's nerves became more tense, and they subconsciously tightened their grip on the guns and ammunition in their hands. "Who are you? Stop right there," the officer shouted, trying to stop them. But when they approached, and especially when they saw the huge body of Orochi, everyone trembled in fear. Some of them could not even hold the guns in their hands, and they fell to the ground. What kind of monster is that? Everyone's mind was full of question marks, and some smart people immediately shouted in fright, "Open fire, don't let them come close." Da. The bullets were like raindrops, covering the sky and covering the earth as they shot towards the few people. Roar. Orochi let out a furious roar, "Kill!" Yamata no Orochi looked down at the crowd from above. The bullets clanged as they hit its scales, but all of them ricocheted back without leaving a single mark. Suddenly, someone finally understood the huge gap in strength between them and the enemy. Their faces were pale, and their hands holding the guns could not help but tremble. "Chimph, it's my turn now." Yamata no Orochi laughed sinisterly. His 8 bloody mouths swooped down like a gust of wind, crashing into the crowd with a whoosh. Instantly, screams that sounded like pigs being slaughtered rang out one after another, piercing through the clouds. One by one, the mouths of the Yamata no Orochi bit down on the bodies of many people. Catcher, the bodies were torn apart at the waist, and then they were swallowed into the stomach of the Yamata no Orochi. 100 Faces looked at all of this with a smile, as if this hellish slaughter was nothing out of the ordinary for him, and there was no fear at all. Junko's face was as pale as paper, and her stomach was churning. Finally, she could not help but vomit at the side, as if she was going to vomit out her gallbladder. 100 Faces glanced at her from the corner of his eyes, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a meaningful smile, and he said lightly, "You have such a big reaction to such a small scene, it seems that you need to train more in the future." Junko put her hands on her thighs, bent over, and touched the corner of her mouth, and asked in shock, "Why did you do this? These people are innocent people, why did you kill them?" Orochi wants to improve his cultivation, so of course he needs these food. 100 Faces said matter-of-factly. "Food?" Junko was startled, and then she became angry, "You treat my people as food. What's wrong with that?" 100 Faces' smile did not diminish, and he stared straight at Junko. That pair of unfathomable eyes made Junko's heart thump, and she subconsciously took 3 steps back. These people are just ants, and they will die in a few decades. Now that they have died in the mouth of Orochi, at least they can be of some use, and this is their honor. "You." Junko swallowed the word pervert that was at the tip of her tongue. No matter how much she said, it was equal to nothing. Everything had happened, and it was irreversible. Her heart seemed to be bleeding, and she watched her people die in the mouth of Orochi, and become the delicious food in his stomach. Perhaps, the state preceptor and the emperor never dreamed that Orochi, who they worshipped day and night, would eventually become the nightmare of the people of the island nation, and they would treat the people of the island nation as delicious food. Perhaps, this was the fate of the people of the island nation, a kind of punishment for the crimes committed in the monstrous war of the past. It was just that this kind of punishment was very cruel, and it made people tremble with fear. But compared with the killings committed by their ancestors in the past, in fact, Orochi's punishment was just a small matter. Orochi was like entering the land of no words, and no one could stop him. One by one, the people of the island nation were swallowed by him. This scene of Shura hell almost made people's hearts stop beating. Junko's eyes were filled with tears, and she turned her head, unable to bear to see this cruel scene. 100 Faces frowned and said, "As my servant, if I say east, it must be east, and if I say west, it must be west. Since I brought you here, you must see this scene, and you must see it all." As soon as she finished speaking, Junko found that a huge force was controlling her neck, forcing her to turn her head little by little. She could only watch this scene with her eyes wide open, unable to even blink. She finally deeply experienced the terror of the 100 Star Sovereign. Since she had become his servant, it was almost impossible to go against his will. "Humph, you don't want your people to be eaten, do you? But I tell you, since you are my servant, you are no longer a person of the island nation. You don't even belong to any country, you only belong to me, 100 Faces. Put away your pitiful heart, this world is cruel, only the strong can survive, the weak only have the same fate as them, at the mercy of others." The 100 Transformations Star Lord said with a murderous aura. Junko bit her lips tightly and didn't say a word. A fierce light flashed in 100 Faces' eyes, and he said sternly, "Orokai, after you enjoy these people, march to the big city, where there are more delicious food waiting for you." Chapter 706. Early in the morning, Tang Zheng accompanied Wu on the balcony, bathing in the rising sun. This place was not far from the sea, and one could see the sea level. A red sun slowly rose from the sea level, shining brightly, illuminating the entire world. Wu Zhou took a deep breath and said, "It's so good to be able to breathe fresh air." She had practically walked through the gates of hell, and her mental state had undergone quite a bit of change. Last night, she had slept soundly, but she had never slept so sweetly before. Her dreams were filled with Tang Zheng's figure. Tang Zheng turned his head to look at her. Her cheeks were suffused with radiance, and she was exceptionally beautiful, like a fairy that had descended to the mortal world. Tang Zheng smiled slightly and said, "After a night of rest, your injuries have mostly healed. This is all thanks to you." Wu Zhou looked at him. "This is what I should do." After Tang Zheng finished speaking, his gaze was attracted by a person in the distance. His pupils constricted as he said, "His back." Wu also immediately turned his head to look, revealing an excited expression as he shouted in ecstasy, "Master is back." Hua! Many people rushed out of the house and rushed towards Wu Junshan to welcome him. Lan Yu walked at the front. When the couple was young, their relationship was extremely good. However, because of Tang Zheng's matter, their relationship was broken. However, ever since Tang Zheng appeared, this crack had gradually been mended, and the relationship between the two of them began to improve by leaps and bounds. Tang Zheng and Wu stood on the balcony, and saw that Wu Junshan was in a sorry state. His clothes were tattered in many places, and it was obvious that he had experienced a fierce battle. Although he did not see it with his own eyes, he could imagine how intense the battle was. Tang Zheng understood that if not for Wu Junshan, it would not have been so easy for them to leave the imperial advisor's mansion so easily. Wu Junshan also raised his head, his gaze first landing on Tang Zheng's body, his expression extremely complicated, then it stopped on Wu Zhuo's face, revealing a look of joy between his brows. Wu Junshan walked up with the crowd surrounding him. Tang Zheng said slowly, "You're back." Wu Junshan squeezed out a smile and nodded, "I'm back." They didn't break through the layer of paper between father and son, but it was obvious that their relationship had improved. Wu Junshan wasn't in a hurry to get results. Getting Tang Zheng to take the initiative to speak was already a rare improvement. "Marshal, how are your injuries?" Wu Junshan asked again. "Master, Tang Zheng has cured me." Wu Junshan revealed a gratified expression as he took a deep look at Tang Zheng. Subconsciously, Tang Zheng was still somewhat resistant to Wu Junshan. His expression turned solemn as he asked, "What happened to the 100 Star Sovereign and Yamata no Orokai?" Wu Junshan's expression also tightened. Seeing this, the others all gathered around, wanting to know the final result. After a great battle between Multiform Star-Lord and Orokai, Orokai escaped into the sea, and Multiform Star-Lord chased after him. It seems that the two sides fought again in the sea. As for the final result, I did not see it with my own eyes, but according to my many years of experience, Orokai will definitely not be able to defeat Multiform Star-Lord. Sooner or later, he will fall into his hands. Hearing this, everyone's expression turned grim. 100 Star Sovereign was already powerful enough, and with the help of Yamata no Orokai, who else in this world could stop them? Everyone looked at each other in dismay as they thought of this matter. Wu was the first to speak. Then isn't this world in danger? Wu Junshan did not say anything, but it was equivalent to tacitly agreeing. Tang Zheng sighed. Even without the 100 Star Sovereign, this world was not necessarily safe. There were too many dangers in this world, but ordinary people did not know about them. What should we do next? Lan Yu asked. We can't go back to that island, and the island nation naturally can't stay there for long. As for Hua Xia, with the pervasive Li Palace and the mysterious power behind the Li Palace and the Great Elder, our situation is not optimistic. If we go back, we might be like sheep in a tiger's den. Of course, Lan Yu was not afraid, but she had to consider the safety of the others. These dozens of people who had always followed her husband and wife, she had to think for them. This time, Wu Junshan also fell into silence. He, who was resourceful, was at his wits' end. Originally, he had always thought that his plan was flawless, and that the uninhabited island was his last resort. But in the end, after decades of planning, he still couldn't escape the investigation of the Li Palace. Furthermore, he was wiped out in one fell swoop, almost burying everyone's lives. This was his mistake as a leader. Therefore, when Lan Yu asked this question, he couldn't give an answer for the time being. Silence, the oppressive atmosphere spread out. Many people subconsciously lowered their heads, their morale low. The impact of this incident on everyone was self-evident. Now that they saw that their leader was at his wits' end, the hesitation and helplessness in everyone's hearts completely exploded. Seeing everyone's worried expressions, Tang Zheng's mind began to work. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He remembered the pirate island he had destroyed. That island's whereabouts were uncertain, and even the warships of various countries couldn't find it. And wasn't that island carried by Gui Chen Sui? This was a moving island that could change its position at will. It was almost impossible for the enemy to investigate it. Moreover, the island's defense would be combined with Gui Chen Sui's. Gui Chen Sui had a natural advantage in defense. If he built a new moving island like this, wouldn't these people have a place to go? He couldn't wait, his eyebrows dancing as he said, I have an idea. The others immediately gathered around. These people were more and more trusting of Tang Zheng. At critical moments, he was always able to turn danger into safety. His strange moves made people involuntarily look forward to it. What idea? Wu Junshan couldn't wait to ask. We want to build a moving island on the sea, so that when everyone lives on it, the enemy will find it extremely difficult to find us. We will be safe, Tang Zheng said solemnly. Moving island? Everyone was stunned. They didn't expect that Tang Zheng would come up with such an outrageous idea. It was simply unrealistic. As if he saw through everyone's thoughts, Tang Zheng confidently smiled and said, For others, a moving island is almost impossible, but for me, it is not impossible. Oh! Everyone's interest was aroused. Even if Wu and Tang Zheng had crossed the ocean together and had seen the magic of Gui Chen Sui, for a moment, they didn't think of this point. Looking at everyone's anxious eyes, Tang Zheng didn't keep them in suspense. He faintly smiled and said, Gui Chen Sui can do this. It can carry an island in the sea and can move it at any time. It even has a defensive function. Gui Chen Sui? Everyone subconsciously turned their head to look inside the room. The two small figures were behind the floor-to-ceiling window, and their spirits were not very good. Gui Chen Sui was injured, and a crack appeared on his turtle shell. Xiao Bai was also injured, but it was not as serious as Gui Chen Sui. But after the continuous battle last night, it consumed a lot of energy. So, the two little guys were a little dispirited. It can do this. Everyone still felt that it was inconceivable. How could Gui Chen Sui's small body carry such a huge island? Gui Chen Sui opened his eyes. Last night, he had been healing. When he heard everyone's conversation, he staggered out. Looking up at everyone, he slowly said, Immortal, I am seriously injured. My current spiritual power is not enough to carry an island. Hearing a turtle speak human language, except for a few people, most of them showed a look of seeing a ghost. Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He immediately saw the crack on Gui Chen Sui's back. If not for saving him, Gui Chensui would not have been bitten by Yamata no Orochi's fangs, let alone be seriously injured. Gui Chensui, don't worry. I will find a way to heal you. Tang Zheng said seriously with a calm face. Gui Chensui shook his head and said, Immortal, this time my injury is very serious. I won't be able to recover in a short time. Tang Zheng said without hesitation, let's find a way together. There will be a solution. After a pause, he said to Wu Junshan and the others, it seems that we will have to stay here for a while. During this time, everyone must be on high alert. Last night, I killed the emperor and destroyed the Kokyo. The island nation is in complete chaos. Moreover, the other party must want to find us even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. So, they may follow any clues to find us. Most people did not know that Tang Jing had done such a big thing last night. Especially Wu, who looked at him in shock. Seeing this, Lan Yu reminded, at that time, you were in a critical situation. He was avenging you. Wu seemed to have been immobilized. She was motionless as she stared at Tang Zheng. Her eyes seemed to have ripples. Even a fool could understand the emotions in her eyes. Lan Yu smiled knowingly and winked at everyone. Everyone understood tacitly and tiptoed away from the balcony. Even Gui Chensui tactfully returned to the house. There were only 2 people left on the balcony. 4 eyes looked at each other. Too many feelings were revealed from each other's eyes. This was the first time Wu knew about Tang Zheng's crazy actions last night. This moved her more than when Tang Zheng saved her life. Because Tang Zheng's actions were too dangerous. What kind of place was the Kokyo? Who was the emperor? Destroying the Kokyo and killing the emperor. Even without thinking, one would know how difficult the task was. In this world, there were not many people who had the courage to do such a thing. But in order to avenge her, Tang Zheng did not hesitate to put himself in danger. This moved her to the extreme. She stared at Tang Zheng and could not help but walk to his side. She gently hugged his waist and leaned her face on his neck. She clearly said, in this life, no matter what you do to me, I will never leave you. In just a short sentence, she seemed to have exhausted all her strength. Then, her whole body softly leaned on Tang Zheng's body. Tang Zheng's heart seemed to have been punched. His hands also hugged her body. Chapter 707. Time flies. It has been a few days since Tang Zheng made a ruckus in the Kokyo. During this time, Tang Zheng and the others learned about the changes in the island nation from the TV. After the death of the emperor, the whole country was under martial law. Every port and airport was strictly controlled, and there were countless people patrolling every day. In addition, the royal family also sent out troops to investigate the whole country, and vowed to find the murderer even if they have to dig 3 feet into the ground. However, the storm did not completely stop, and there were many cases of people disappearing in many cities, and according to preliminary statistics, there were more than 10,000 people. An invisible fear shrouded the sky of this small place, and the people were in a constant state of panic. Fortunately, the place that Tang Zheng and the others chose was relatively remote, and the carpet search did not reach this place yet. In the past few days, Tang Zheng had been looking for a way to heal Gui Chensui. However, no matter how many methods he tried, it was all in vain. That crack was still a ghastly sight. Without Gui Chensui, they could not safely leave the island nation, let alone build a moving island in the sea. Tang Zheng failed again, and looked deeply at Gui Chensui, and his eyes could not help but become gloomy. Immortal, it's all my fault for being useless, and dragging you down. Gui Chensui blamed himself. Gui Chensui, you were injured because of me, and I did not protect you well. Tang Zheng's finger gently brushed the turtle shell, and said self-deprecatingly, I have always boasted about how great I am, but now I am helpless. My injury can only be healed after a long time, unless you have the turtle clan's oracle bone, then the wound can be healed in a short time. Oracle bone? Tang Zheng's expression froze, and subconsciously sat up straight. What is an oracle bone? The oracle bone is the sacred object of the turtle clan. In ancient times, humans carved many mysterious and complicated words on the turtle shell of my clan. These turtle shells are the oracle bone, and have unpredictable power. It is the sacred object of the turtle clan. Not only can it heal injuries, but more importantly, it contains many of the turtle clan's secret methods, and if you practice these secret methods, your cultivation can advance by leaps and bounds. Gui Chen Sui said with yearning. Then where are the oracle bones? Tang Zheng asked impatiently. Gui Chen Sui shook his head. The history of the oracle bone is too long. It is said that it has been lost for a long time. The dragon clan once collected it, but no one knows where it is. Dragons? Tang Zheng's head twitched. Wasn't the Langya Pavilion the place where the dragon clan stored their treasures? Since this oracle bone was so powerful, it was naturally a rare treasure. Would it be kept in the Langya Pavilion? Do you think there will be oracle bones in Langya Pavilion? Tang Zheng asked. Langya Pavilion? Gui Chensue's small eyes twitched. He was the one who told Tang Zheng about Langya Pavilion. He shook his little head and said, I don't know either. After hesitating for a moment, it added, the Langya Pavilion is a place where the dragon clan keeps their treasures. The oracle bone might really be kept there. Tang Zheng raised his eyebrows and was overjoyed. Okay, then I'll go to the Langya Pavilion to look for it. Go to the Langya Pavilion to look for it. Gui Chen Sui was shocked. The Langya Pavilion was an important place for the dragon clan. Gui Chen Sui had only heard of it and had never seen it with his own eyes. Even though he told Tang Zheng about the Langya Pavilion last time, he didn't know that Tang Zheng could directly go to the Langya Pavilion. Seeing Tang Zheng nodding seriously, Gui Chen Sui knew that he was not joking. He said suspiciously, Immortal, only the dragon clan can go to the Langya Pavilion. We can't do it. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and said, I'll tell you a secret. I can also go to the Langya Pavilion. Really? Gui Chen Sui was shocked. He raised his little head high. How is that possible? Isn't Langya Pavilion only accessible to the dragon clan? Tang Zheng muttered. The five-clawed golden dragon once said that only the dragon clan had the dragon seal, and he had it. Now Gui Chen Sui said that only the dragon clan could go to the Langya Pavilion. Did he really become a member of the dragon clan? He shook his head and threw these messy thoughts to the back of his mind. He said seriously, I can really go to the Langya Pavilion. Since the oracle bone may be in the Langya Pavilion, then I'll have to try. Do you know which floor the oracle bone is on? Seeing Gui Chen Sui's confused face, Tang Zheng shook his head and said, It seems that you don't know either. I'll have to explore by myself. It had been a month since the last time he entered the Langya Pavilion. Tang Zheng could enter the Langya Pavilion again. Now he could only go to the second floor of the Langya Pavilion. There were no oracle bones on the first two floors. It must be on the higher floors. But his cultivation was not there yet. But now there was a glimmer of hope. He had to try. Let's go to the third floor first and see if there are any oracle bones there. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth and said, Gui Chen Sui, guard me. Don't let others disturb me. Immortal, are you going to the Langya Pavilion? Yes. How do I get there? Tang Zheng pointed at his own forehead, smiled mysteriously, and said, I'm going. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, as if he was a senior monk in meditation. Gui Chen Sui looked at him curiously and crawled around him. He did not understand how Tang Zheng went to the Langya Pavilion. At this moment, Tang Zheng was standing in front of the Langya Pavilion. The towering pavilion was so tall that people could only look up. Tang Zheng looked up and muttered to himself, Oracle Bone, where are you? He walked into the Langya Pavilion and went straight to the second floor. He stood at the stairs leading to the third floor. The stairs to the third floor were in front of him, but he did not dare to rashly step on it. His Dragon God technique had only reached the second level. If he rashly stepped on the stairs, he would be mercilessly bounced back by the power of the Langya Pavilion. He would waste this opportunity to enter. The last trip to the Langya Pavilion was still fresh in his memory. All along, the dragons who entered the Langya Pavilion could only stay for a quarter of an hour. But last time, Tang Zheng unexpectedly broke the limit. He actually stayed for an hour, which was far beyond the limit of the Langya Pavilion. Moreover, at that time, he used the time in the Langya Pavilion to read many books on the first and second floor. He improved his comprehension and benefited a lot. Sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. Let's cultivate first and strive to break through the dragon god technique. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry. Instead, he sat down in front of the stairs and focused on cultivating. The dragon god technique was obscure and profound. Even for the dragon clan, it was very difficult. The same was true for Tang Zheng. He closed his eyes and silently operated the dragon god technique. The true qi in his body flowed. The little golden dragon in his glabella surged and emitted a dazzling golden light. Tang Zheng's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds since the last time he entered the Langya Pavilion. When he operated the dragon god technique, he clearly felt that the places where he felt stagnant before had become unobstructed. The true qi flowed quickly in each vein and finally gathered in his glabella. Whoosh! A golden light shot out from his glabella. Gui Qiansui was startled by this scene and subconsciously staggered backward. But the next scene shocked Gui Qiansui again. There was a kind of trembling from the depths of his soul. In the golden light, a golden dragon was shining brightly. It was more dazzling than the surrounding golden light. However, this golden dragon did not fly out. Instead, it was in Tang Zheng's glabella. But Tang Zheng's skin seemed to be transparent, so the golden dragon could be seen clearly. In fact, Gui Qiansui had never seen a real dragon clan. When he was born, the South Sea Dragon Palace had been abandoned by the Dragon Clan. However, there were murals of the Dragon Clan in the South Sea Dragon Palace. Gui Qiansui had been looking at these murals since he was a child. The Dragon Clan in the murals had a majesty that made all living things bow down. Gui Qiansui had always yearned for the Dragon Clan and hoped that he could see a real Dragon Clan one day. Although this wish had not been realized yet, Tang Zheng's situation at this moment made him clearly feel something of the Dragon Clan, the dragon aura. Although the dragon in Tang Zheng's glabella was very young, the dragon aura it emitted was not something ordinary creatures could resist. At least, Gui Qiansui could not resist it and retreated in fear. What is going on? Why is there a dragon in the immortal's body? Is he also a Dragon Clan? No, absolutely impossible. I have never heard of a person becoming a Dragon Clan. This is simply a fantasy. Gui Qiansui shook his head fiercely and denied this absurd idea. Once again, he looked at it attentively. The golden light on the little dragon's body became more and more dazzling, as if the golden light from all directions was absorbed by it. From all directions, countless true qi poured into the glabella and integrated into the golden light. Suddenly, the golden light shone and wrapped the little golden dragon in an instant. The two claws kept dancing, which was particularly eye-catching. Time passed by little by little. Tang Zheng felt that the true qi was endless, surging like a river, quickly pouring into the glabella and replenishing the golden light. He had already found a way. The increase of his cultivation was indeed very useful. The true qi of the 9th grade of fasting was really terrifying. After turning into golden light, it replenished the golden dragon little by little. The golden light hovered in the golden dragon's abdomen and gathered little by little. Lingering together, a small dragon claw slowly formed. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned and immediately overjoyed. This is the rhythm of the dragon god secret art's breakthrough. At this critical moment, he must not drop the ball. So, he quickly calmed his mind, calmed down, and stared at the golden dragon and the dragon claw that was in the process of forming. Time passed by little, the golden light gradually dimmed. But at this moment, the golden dragon's abdomen had already grown a 3rd dragon claw. Wow! Gui Qiansui saw this scene clearly. Although he did not know what was going on, when he saw the dragon claw formed, he could not help but exclaim. This scene was too magical. It was not something that could be seen casually. Moreover, when the 3rd dragon claw grew, the dragon aura of the golden dragon was obviously improved by a level. Chapter 708. Tang Zheng looked at the 3-clawed golden dragon in his glabella. It was vivid and lifelike, as if it was really alive. The 3rd stage of the dragon god technique, I really did it. Tang Zheng excitedly waved his fist. The 9th grade of Anidia really had an extraordinary effect, breaking through the 3rd stage of the dragon god technique so easily. If the five-clawed golden dragon knew about this, it would definitely be shocked. It had always vowed that the dragon god technique was very difficult to cultivate, but ever since I started cultivating the first layer, it has been a lot easier for me. He looked up and saw the stairs leading to the third floor of the Langya pavilion in front of him. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile, and he walked up. Creak. His feet landed on the stairs, making a slight sound, but he was not ejected out of the Langya pavilion by the mysterious force like before. He breathed a sigh of relief and strode up to the third floor. Just as he stepped into the third floor, a murderous aura hit him in the face. This was not a murderous aura, but a murderous aura that filled the sky. It was so dense that it could not be dispersed, like water, and he was like a fish in the water. His smile immediately disappeared, and his brows furrowed. Such a strong murderous aura was definitely not a good sign. What exactly was so dangerous about the third floor? He cautiously looked over, and his pupils instantly dilated. This floor was not like the first two floors, which were filled with an antique and scholarly atmosphere. This floor was like a huge display stage. Not only were the four walls filled with a dazzling array of items, there were also many items on the shelves on the ground. His breathing involuntarily quickened, and he muttered to himself, "I knew that the Langya pavilion would definitely have these good things. Sure enough, treasures, these are all treasures." This entire floor was filled with treasures. Sabers, spears, swords, and halberds were the most common weapons. There were also many strange weapons, dazzling the eyes. However, this time, he didn't come for the weapon, but for the oracle bone. "Oracle bone, where are you? Don't be on the floors above. If that's the case, I won't be able to do anything." He muttered to himself endlessly and started searching the floors. When his gaze swept past the weapons one by one, he could not help but feel his emotions fluctuate because these weapons were not ordinary weapons, but magic treasures. The first thing that caught his eye was the outermost yellow-grade transcendent artifact. This was the most basic transcendent artifact. If Tang Zheng had just started cultivating, of course he would be very fond of it. Now, he was no longer the same as before, and yellow-grade transcendent artifacts were nothing in his eyes. As he walked forward, a profound grade transcendent artifact came into view, and he couldn't help but nod. Tang Zheng's gaze trembled as he looked at the magic treasure in surprise. It was a 3-foot-long sword with a translucent dark green body. It was sparkling and translucent, as if the green of the Buddha forest had been completely absorbed into the sword. However, it also emitted a powerful sword intent. Good sword. Tang Zheng couldn't help but praise. If he didn't already have the War Soul sword, he probably wouldn't have been able to resist using this sword as his own. Moreover, it was also a heaven-grade magic treasure. Clear Wind Sword. When Tang Zheng held the sword hilt with both hands, the name of the sword jumped into his mind. Moreover, this sword had another characteristic that made Tang Zheng startled. This sword seemed to have no weight at all. It was light as a feather, as if he was holding air in his hand. What a gentle sword name, but this sword isn't gentle at all. It's definitely a killing weapon. Tang Zheng exclaimed. In his heart, a person involuntarily jumped out, Yi Ding Dang. I've already passed the wind-chasing sword art to Ding Dang. The wind-chasing sword art is fast, fierce, and accurate. It has high requirements for the sword. If the sword is light and thin, and can cut through even the slightest hair, then when used together with the wind-chasing sword art, it will definitely display an even stronger power. Tang Zheng's eyes were filled with joy. The clear wind sword and the wind-chasing sword art were a perfect match. Moreover, both had the word wind in their names. It was like a match made in heaven. Although Yi Ding Dang was a martial artist and the clear wind sword was a magic treasure, magic treasures could also be used as normal weapons. It was just a bit wasteful. However, because Yi Ding Dang practiced the wind-chasing sword art, she didn't need inner strength to control the sword. She only needed to rely on the exquisite sword moves, which was a perfect match for the clear wind sword. I'll give this clear wind sword to Ding Dang. I hope she likes it. He didn't hesitate to make a decision and put away the clear wind sword. Finally, his gaze fell on the third cover. As for what was inside, he had no idea. He didn't rush to open it. His heart was a bit nervous. He had already searched all the other places on this floor. This was the only place left. If it wasn't an oracle bone, then this trip would be a waste of time. He didn't think that he would be able to reach the 4th stage of the Dragon God technique in a short period of time. This was related to Gui Chensue's injury. It was related to where Wu Junshan and the others would go next. In short, this matter was very important. He took a deep breath and carefully lifted the cover. At this moment, his heart stopped beating. His eyes stared straight at it. There was no dazzling rainbow light, no sharp sword chi. There was only a black thing the size of a palm. It was engraved with veined patterns. What is this? Tang Zheng's face revealed a look of suspicion, as the appearance of this item was not that great. It could not be compared to the 7-colored silk or the clear wind sword, but since it was placed here so solemnly, then it was definitely not trash. He picked up the thing. There was no reaction. The name of this thing did not appear in his mind. What the hell is this thing? Tang Zheng looked at it over and over again. For a long time, he didn't get a specific answer. The veined patterns engraved on it were very complicated. It was like a small tadpole. It looked like words, but it didn't look like words. Tang Zheng had never seen such a strange thing. After searching all the places, he still couldn't find the oracle bone. He couldn't help but feel dispirited and disappointed. God, are you playing with me? You gave me hope, and then instantly made me despair. You can't play with people like this. Tang Zheng waved his fist above his head and angrily roared. The voice hovered above his head for a while and then disappeared. Only Tang Zheng and the weapons in the room were left. Well, since it's like this, I can only think of another way. Tang Zheng casually threw the black thing into the Sumeru pouch, and then strode downstairs. He didn't put the other weapons into the pouch. Because now he was surrounded by warriors, he didn't need these magic weapons for the time being. Tang Zheng slowly opened his eyes. Gui Qiansui hurriedly crawled over and couldn't wait to ask, Upper Immortal, how's the situation? Tang Zheng's expression dimmed as he said, I entered the Langya Pavilion, but there are many floors in the Langya Pavilion and my cultivation can only reach the 3rd floor. I didn't find the oracle bone, maybe the oracle bone is on a higher floor. Gui Qiansui heard this, and the expectation in his eyes immediately disappeared. It was replaced by disappointment and loss. Gui Qiansui, I'm sorry. I couldn't help you. Tang Zheng apologized. Gui Qiansui raised his head and said, Upper Immortal, you're too kind. It's my great honor to find the oracle bone in Langya Pavilion for me. Even if I die, I'm already satisfied. Moreover, this injury won't take my life. I just need more time to recover. But I'm really useless if I delay Upper Immortal's important matter. Gui Qiansui not only didn't blame him, but also kept blaming himself. Tang Zheng quickly said, Gui Qiansui, don't worry. I'll practice hard and strive to reach the higher floor of Langya Pavilion as soon as possible to find the oracle bone for you. Upper Immortal, Langya Pavilion is an important place of the Dragon Clan. You can go in and out freely. Moreover, a golden dragon appeared on your forehead just now. This situation has never happened before. It's a great opportunity for Upper Immortal. Gui Qiansui praised, but you'd better not let others know about this situation. Otherwise, I can't guarantee that others won't covet it. Tang Zheng was moved and nodded. He admitted that Gui Qiansui's reminder was very reasonable. Chapter 709. Tang Zheng remembered his harvest in Langya Pavilion, but he didn't know what that black thing was, so he took it out and asked Gui Qiansui, What do you think this is? That thing flew to Gui Qiansui and stared at it with its small eyes. It touched it with its claws and said, This. For a moment, it was a little sluggish. Tang Zheng was startled and asked curiously, What's wrong? Gui Qiansui raised his head and looked at Tang Zheng with a strange expression. Immortal, isn't this an oracle bone? What? Tang Zheng was shocked and almost jumped up. It's different from what you described. The oracle bone described by Gui Qiansui was not black like this, and there were turtle shell patterns on it, but there were no turtle shell patterns on it except for the scribbles. So, Tang Zheng thought for a long time, but still didn't recognize it as the oracle bone he was looking for. Gui Qiansui said, "I'm just talking about an ordinary oracle bone, but this is not an ordinary one, so you didn't recognize it. In fact, if I didn't touch it, I wouldn't recognize it at a glance. The oracle bone is the shell of the turtle clan, and it has the unique aura of our turtle clan. When I touched it, I could feel this aura. As for the uniqueness of this turtle shell, it has been refined by someone." "Refined before?" Tang Zheng suspiciously creased his eyebrows. Gui Qiansui nodded. "Yes, the turtle's shell is very hard and can be used for defense. Some turtle shells can be refined into magic weapons, and this is one of them." "You mean this is a magic weapon?" Tang Zheng asked in surprise. He didn't feel any special aura from it, so he didn't think of it as a magic weapon. Gui Qiansui nodded. "Of course, this is a heaven-level defensive magic weapon. Immortal, you can infuse your true qi into it, and everything will be clear." Hearing this, Tang Zheng put the oracle bone in his hand and infused his true qi into it. Whoosh! A ray of black light gushed out from the oracle bone, forming a shield. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up and was surprised. It's really a heaven-level magic weapon. When he infused his true qi into it, he could finally feel the power of the oracle bone. However, this magic weapon didn't have a name like the other two magic weapons. "Immortal, you don't have a defensive magic weapon. This oracle bone is suitable for you. You can name it first." Gui Qiansui said. "Isn't the oracle bone to heal your injuries? Healing won't damage the oracle bone. After I use it is still a heaven-level magic weapon." Tang Zheng suddenly realized that he had misunderstood and thought that after healing, the oracle bone would lose its use. The more he looked at it, the more he liked it. It was more and more. Now, he had the heaven-shocking bow, shooting sun arrows, battle soul sword, dragon-trapped rope, and 9 revolving pill furnace. Among them, the dragon-trapped rope could occasionally be turned into a shield and used as a defensive magic weapon, but after all, it was not a true defensive magic weapon, and its defensive power was not strong. If he had a magic weapon with strong defensive power, his overall strength would definitely have a qualitative leap. Tang Zheng's thoughts fluctuated as he played with the oracle bone. Since the oracle bone is the sacred object of your turtle clan, then let's call it Sacred Armor Shield. Sacred Armor Shield, good name. This matter should not be delayed, use it to heal first. Tang Zheng impatiently urged. "Yes, Immortal, please wait for a moment." With the oracle bone, Gui Qiansui was full of confidence and spirit. The oracle bone flew into the air and flew above Gui Qiansui's head. Suddenly, a ray of light shot out from Gui Qiansui's back and directly hit the oracle bone. The oracle bone buzzed and shook, then a ray of black light fell and merged with the light on Gui Qiansui's back and fell on his turtle shell. In an instant, Gui Qiansui was wrapped by the black light, and Tang Zheng could not see what was happening. He silently stood by the side and stared at Gui Qiansui. At this time, Marshall quietly walked in from the outside. When she saw this scene, she was surprised and asked, "What is going on?" "Gui Qiansui is healing. It won't be long before we can leave this place," Tang Zheng said excitedly. Marshall was slightly startled and said with a complicated expression, "That's great." In fact, Marshall's heart was filled with mixed feelings. These few days, although they were in a foreign country and could be in danger at any time, but it was her happiest days. Tang Zheng spent most of his time with her. Moreover, ever since that intimate hug on the balcony that day and the mutual confession of their hearts had come together. They had a tacit understanding and were very sweet. Deep in Marshall's heart, she did not want this perfect state to be broken. She knew that once she left this place, Tang Zheng would not completely belong to her. Yi Dingdang, Fang Shisha, Liu Qingmai, and even Princess Anne, and perhaps more women would flock to Tang Zheng, then she would not be able to monopolize him. She did not feel it before, but now she faintly felt sour, but she had been silently burying this feeling in the bottom of her heart. However, she also knew that this was completely her wishful thinking, and was not realistic at all. Tang Zheng would leave this place sooner or later and return to Huaxia, but she did not expect this day to come so soon. Tang Zheng looked at her deeply and noticed the strangeness between her eyebrows. His heart moved as he held her hand and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Marshall squeezed out a smile and clasped his hand, saying, "Nothing, I'm happy to hear this news." Tang Zheng did not think too much about it and said, "All of this depends on Gui Chen Sui, but I don't know how long it will take for it to heal." Marshall also glanced at Gui Chen Sui, who was enveloped in light, and said absent-mindedly, "It doesn't matter how long we wait." "Oh right, are you coming back to Huashia with me this time, or are you staying on the island?" Tang Zheng asked. Marshall's expression panicked. She did not know how her master and mistress would arrange for her. She could not help but feel a little scared and said, "I don't know either." "This is your choice." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "I want to go back to Huashia with you." Tang Zheng's mouth hooked up into a smile. He gently wrapped his arms around her waist and said with a mischievous smile, "Is it because you can't bear to part with me?" Marshall was a little embarrassed. These days when Tang Zheng had nothing to do, he would smile mischievously and move his hands and feet. He was like an irritable little monkey, which often made Marshall feel shy. In the past, the relationship between the two of them was too rigid. Now, they were like a couple in love. Occasionally, their intimate actions made Marshall's heart beat faster. She was even more excited than when they were intimate. Nonsense. Marshall rolled her eyes at him. Tang Zheng's mood was very good. He smiled and said, "There are no outsiders here. What are you afraid of? It doesn't matter if you tell the truth." Marshall subconsciously looked at Gui Chen Sui. "It is healing. It can't hear." Tang Zheng said. "Humph, I won't say. Master and mistress have been waiting for your news. Since Gui Chen Sui's injury is almost healed, I will immediately tell them the good news." After that, her figure flashed and escaped from Tang Zheng's devil claw. Tang Zheng shook his head and gave a knowing smile. A day and a night passed. The light that wrapped around Gui Chen Sui dissipated. Gui Chen Sui finished healing. There were no scars on his back. He was full of energy again. He excitedly said, "Immortal, the oracle bone contains my turtle clan's spiritual energy. It is this spiritual energy that helped me to heal quickly." Tang Zheng faintly smiled and glanced at the oracle bone. There were no changes, so he casually put it away and said, "Since it is like this, a long night is full of dreams. We will immediately depart." "Yes." Gui Chen Sui excitedly shook his head. This group of people went out of the house and went straight to the sea. Everyone was very excited. They were finally going to leave this damned place. They almost lost their lives. Moreover, some of their companions were sacrificed. However, in the end, they turned this country upside down. It could be considered as a temporary release of their anger. This area was very desolate. When they arrived at the seaside, they did not meet anyone. The sea was just under their feet. Tang Zheng nodded to Gui Chen Sui. Gui Chen Sui immediately climbed into the water. When it was immersed in the water, its speed was significantly faster. It was completely submerged by the sea. Gui Chen Sui stopped, turned around and opened his mouth. A bubble came out of his mouth. This bubble was getting bigger and bigger. Finally, it became the size of a room, enough to accommodate dozens of people. If we enter the bubble, we can dive to the bottom of the sea. In this way, the enemy will not find us easily. Tang Zheng did not think that the enemy would only intercept them at the port and the airport. He was afraid that the Maritime Self-Defense Force would also be arranged to patrol the sea. They would not let them go easily. When they were at the bottom of the lake, they experienced the mystery of the bubble. So, they entered the bubble. The bubble quickly sank to the bottom of the sea. There was no trace of them on the surface of the sea. Gui Chen Sui took the lead and led the way. The bubble automatically followed his footsteps. Everyone opened their eyes wide and looked at the world under the sea in amazement. This kind of treatment was not common. They should seize the time to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the sea. The bottom of the sea was really beautiful. Countless kinds of fish swam from both sides of the bubble. Some of them curiously looked around, looking at the strange big bubble and the people inside. Wu opened his eyes wide and looked around. His face showed a surprised expression. Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other. Both of them showed a gratified expression. All of this was due to their son's credit. The so-called the student surpasses the master. Chen Sui, Gui and Bubble were not slow. They had already drifted far away from the coast and arrived at the deep sea. The surrounding scenery was more colorful, and there were many huge fishes swimming by on both sides. It was a sight to behold. Chapter 7:10. Seeing Gui Chen Sui stop, everyone's nerves tightened. Tang Zheng quickly asked, "What's wrong?" "We encountered an enemy." "Enemy?" Everyone was surprised. They were in the deep sea, how could they encounter an enemy? However, everyone quickly understood what was going on. They saw a huge black object flying over from afar. Submarine. Everyone suddenly realized that the island nation had not only intercepted and investigated in the sea and the air, but also deployed a submarine at the bottom of the sea. Tang Zheng and the others thought that they were undetected, but they accidentally ran into the enemy's encirclement. Many people's complexion suddenly changed. They were in the deep sea and not on land. Submarines were undoubtedly the overlords of the sea. Although they were strong individually, they could not use their skills in the sea. Gui Chen Sui seemed to know what everyone was thinking. He stood in front of the bubble and said, "Don't panic." "So what if it's a submarine? They can't do whatever they want in the sea." Tang Zheng smiled and comforted them. "Don't worry, everyone. Gui Chen Sui has his own countermeasures." Seeing that Tang Zheng was so confident, everyone temporarily relaxed and returned to their stomachs as they stared ahead without blinking. The submarine had already approached. Compared to such a huge object, Tang Zheng and the others were like weak little dots that could not withstand the wind. They would be easily smashed into pieces. Moreover, the enemy would not choose a head-on collision. Because, with a burst of snow-white water, 2 torpedoes were shot out directly, drawing a white line in the water. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, unable to take their eyes off this scene. Suddenly, Gui Chen Sui's body lit up with a burst of light. With a bang, the light shone and the sea rolled. The explosion of the torpedoes was completely blocked by the light. When the light dissipated, a behemoth appeared in front of them. It was Gui Chen Sui. His body was comparable to the submarine. He kicked his 4 legs and turned into a white line, rushing to the submarine. Bang! With a loud bang, a pit and a crack appeared on the submarine, and the submarine sank to the bottom of the sea. "Wow!" everyone exclaimed. On land, they didn't have a deep understanding of Chen Sui's power, but in the sea, his attack power increased by 100 times. "Be careful." All of a sudden, the sound of Tang Zheng's footsteps rang out. A missile silently shot over from another direction. There were also other submarines. Gui Chen Sui nimbly turned his body, and the seawater tumbled, forming a tall water wall in an instant. The missile hit the water wall and exploded, but the huge shockwave did not make Gui Chen Sui move an inch. "You want to play hide and seek with me? Let's see how you can hide in this sea," Gui Chen Sui said angrily. The opponent seemed to have discovered Gui Chen Sui's strength, so he didn't rush forward recklessly. Instead, he chose to attack from a distance in order to play to his advantage. Gui Chen Sui immediately saw through the opponent's intention and took the initiative to attack. His huge body flashed and disappeared into the dark sea. Boom! Boom! The sound of an explosion immediately came from the dark depths of the sea, making people feel as if their hearts had been hit by a heavy hammer, almost suffocating them. Everyone stared at the deep sea, trying to figure out what had happened. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion, and a ball of fire rose into the sky, but was quickly swallowed by the waves. Gui Chen Sui swam back from the deep sea and said, "Shangxian, the enemy has been completely eliminated." Tang Zheng nodded with relief. The destruction of 2 submarines of the island nation would certainly make them feel distressed for a long time. "Let's move on," Tang Zheng ordered. Gui Chen Sui took the lead and led the way. This time, they didn't encounter any more enemies. After a long time, they finally arrived at their destination, the island where Wu Junshan and the others lived. Everyone floated to the surface and walked on the beach. Seeing the island again, everyone had a complicated feeling. They had just walked through the gates of hell, so their mood was particularly complicated. The others didn't know Tang Zheng's plan, so they looked at him curiously. Tang Zheng smiled and didn't keep them in suspense. He said directly, "Everyone has lived on this island for so long, so we are familiar with it. Moreover, there are many houses on the island that can be used after some repairs, so it's more convenient. So I chose this island to be everyone's residence in the future. Isn't this place already exposed? The island nation won't let go of this place. Isn't this a living target?" Someone questioned. "Don't worry. Didn't I say that I will build a moving island? Everyone on the moving island won't be easily discovered by the enemy." Tang Zheng said. "Moving island? Isn't this a fixed island?" Everyone was skeptical. Tang Zheng didn't waste time and directly asked everyone to get on the island. Then he said, "Everyone, wait on the island for a while. There may be some movements later. Don't panic and be impatient." "What movements will there be?" "We'll know in a while." Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. "Gui Qian Sui, let's go." Tang Zheng and Gui Qian Sui went into the sea together and soon sank to the bottom of the sea, leaving behind a group of people looking at each other and chattering. Wu Junshan looked at Lan Yu and said worriedly, "Can he do it?" Lan Yu proudly raised his head and said unquestionably, "Of course he can. How can my son not do it?" "Marshal, don't you think so?" Marshal had been staring at the sea. Hearing this, he turned his head and smiled. "Master's wife is right." Lan Yu looked deeply at Marshal and praised, "Marshal, you look very good when you smile. You are very feminine. In the future, smile more when you are beside Tang Zheng. He will definitely like it. Men like feminine women." Master's wife, Marshal's cheeks were slightly red. Although she had been with Lan Yu all the time, Lan Yu had never said such words to her. She couldn't help but feel shy. "Silly girl, I'm doing this for your own good. He has so many women by his side. If you don't stand out, how can you compete with those women?" Lan Yu said earnestly. Marshal's cheeks turned even redder. He wished he could find a hole to hide in. Cough. Hearing this, Wu Junshan suddenly coughed, reminding them that there were others. Lan Yu turned around and looked at the crowd. "Go to the side. You have the nerve to eavesdrop on women's matters." Everyone smiled meaningfully and quickly retreated to the side. However, their gazes towards Marshal were very thought-provoking. In the past, Marshal had a high prestige in the martial organization. Sometimes, his prestige was even higher than some elders. Now that everyone was looking at him with such gazes, he was extremely shy. Lan Yu pulled Marshal's hand and said in a low voice, "Marshal, I watched you grow up. I understand you too well. The environment of the martial organization has created you, turning you into a decisive person, just like a boy. The martial organization has let you down." Master's wife, Lan Yu interrupted her, shook his head and said, "Listen to me first. After all, you are a girl, so you should have the characteristics of a girl. How could I not know your feelings for Tang Zheng? Actually, I have high hopes for you too, and if you become my daughter-in-law, I will definitely be very happy. However, just like I said before, men will always like gentle women. This is the nature of men. If you restrain your previous personality and pretend to be gentle, you will definitely leave a deep impression on him and make him like you even more. Don't you want that too?" At this point, Marshal no longer hesitated and asked nervously, "Really? Of course it's true. I've been there before, so I know better than you." "Oh, I'll remember." Marshal blinked her big black eyes and silently memorized it. In addition, this time, when you accompany him back to Huashia, you will definitely experience many difficulties and obstacles. You must always accompany him. This is a good opportunity to improve your relationship and capture a man's heart. Lan Yu personally instructed, and Marshal's mind also became active. The two of them whispered to each other non-stop. Boom! With a loud sound, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Everyone was shocked and exclaimed, "What's going on? Is there an earthquake?" Lan Yu and Marshal also stopped. Lan Yu remembered Tang Zheng's warning and quickly comforted them. "Don't worry, Tang Zheng said that nothing will happen. Everyone, don't panic." The island kept shaking as if there was a real earthquake. Everyone's face tightened and looked at each other, not knowing what happened. At this moment, Tang Zheng was staring at Gui Chen Sui from the bottom of the sea. Gui Chen Sui became a huge monster again. This time, it was bigger than before, like an island. It broke the stone connecting the island and the bottom of the sea. With a rumbling sound, the island immediately sank to the bottom of the sea. Gui Chen Sui's figure flashed and swam to the bottom of the island. The island fell on its back, splashing countless waves, and the falling momentum of the island immediately stopped. So that's how it is. Although Tang Zheng already knew about Gui Chen Sui's plan, seeing it with his own eyes, he still couldn't help but feel shocked. Gui Chen Sui was really too powerful. He could actually carry an island like this. Tang Zheng couldn't estimate how heavy it was. Immortal, I'm done. Gui Chen Sui fixed the island and said. Tang Zheng nodded and said, Gui Chen Sui, it's been hard on you. Now, I'll leave all of them to you. Take care of them for me. Immortal, rest assured, with me here, I will do my best to protect their safety. It's just that I can't serve you in the future. No, your island is my last support. If I can't survive in the future, then I can only return to this island. Tang Zheng already had a plan. His strength was getting stronger and stronger, and the things he did were getting more and more out of hand. He couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be chased down by others. Chapter 7:11. Tang Zheng bid farewell to Gui Chen Sui, returned to the shore, and explained everything to everyone. When everyone heard this, they were all shocked. A real island had actually become a moving island, becoming everyone's resting place. The island began to move, following the current towards Huashia, moving at a speed that was not slow. One day, a fishing boat entered their line of sight, and the island stopped moving. Tang Zheng, Wu, and Xiao Bai boarded the fishing boat together, and a few days later, they boarded the land of Huashia from the port. Once again stepping onto this hot land, Tang Zheng's heart was somewhat apprehensive. He did not know what was waiting for him. However, he would deal with whatever came his way. Whatever came his way, he would take it all on. Tang Zheng and Marshall were like a couple. On the same day, they bought a ticket back to the capital and entered the airport. Looking at the bustling crowd, Tang Zheng took a deep breath and said, "The motherland is still the best." The corner of Marshall's mouth slightly raised as she quietly looked at him. Her eyes were like water, extremely gentle. Tang Zheng turned his head to look at her, and said with a strange expression, "Ever since we left the island, I feel like you have changed into a different person." A trace of panic flashed across Marshall's eyes as she covered it up and said, "Nonsense, I didn't." Tang Zheng shrugged his shoulders and did not think too much about it. He took the boarding pass and said, "Let's go, we can board the plane." The two of them stood up and were about to walk towards the boarding gate when suddenly, there was an uproar in the departure hall. A group of people rushed over from afar, armed with live ammunition, their bodies emitting killing intent. Squeak squeak. Xiao Bai on his shoulder cried out vigilantly, its pair of small eyes rolling around as it bared its teeth. Its injuries had already healed, but the little guy seemed to have become a little irritable. Whenever there was a situation, it would be so angry that it wanted to spit fire. Tang Zheng rubbed its head and warned, "Xiao Bai, don't act recklessly." Xiao Bai was under his illusion, the others could not see Xiao Bai's existence at all. Marshall's pupils slightly constricted as she stared at the group of people rushing over and said in a low voice, "It seems like they are coming for us." Tang Zheng expressionlessly said, "Of course they are coming for us." He had already smelled a familiar aura from these people, super soldiers modified by the Dragon Group. The Dragon Group's genetic modification project was a great success. Who knows how many super soldiers they had modified. Furthermore, the 4 heavenly kings were the best of the best. The burns on Marshall's body was caused by one of the 4 heavenly kings, the Fire King. "It's the Dragon Group." Marshall also saw the clues and said softly. Tang Zheng nodded his head without batting an eyelid. "The Dragon Group spies are everywhere. If we use our real identities to buy tickets, then we will definitely be monitored by them. It seems that their formation is not small. I'm afraid that there will be a big one. Didn't you and the Dragon Groups? Why do they dare to be so bold?" Marshall said suspiciously. Tang Zheng laughed coldly. The balance is only temporary. There must be other factors or other forces entering and breaking this balance. Then the dragon group's Xingfeng will naturally be unrestrained. Marshall frowned, agreeing with his point of view. Then what should we do? Let's wait and see. Let's see what kind of medicine the other party is selling. Tang Zheng was prepared to deal with all changes. Because, for the time being, he still could not figure out the dragon group's trump card. While they were talking, the dragon group had already surrounded the two of them. The other passengers were also forcefully isolated. Tang Zheng and Marshall were like dumplings filled with fillings, being chased and blocked in the middle. Tang Zheng remained unmoved. He looked around fearlessly and said, "Where's Xingfeng? If the main character doesn't come out, he will send you shrimp soldiers and crab generals." Back then, when Tang Zheng's cultivation was not as good as it was now, he was not afraid of the dragon group, let alone now that his cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds. He had already reached the 9th level of Anidia, and was only a step away from the Aurus core stage. There was a commotion in the other party's crowd. 3 people walked out with a majestic gait. They glared at him and roared, "How dare you? Who do you think you are? How dare you call our boss by his name?" Tang Zheng glanced at the 3 of them and said, "The owner didn't come out, so he let the dogs out first. Furthermore, it's 3 dogs that can bark. Oh, I remember that there were originally 4 dogs, but one of them had already turned into a dead dog, right?" He could tell that the 3 of them were completely different from the other super warriors. Especially the aura on their bodies, they were extremely cold, similar to the Fire King back then. Thus, he concluded that the 3 of them were definitely the other 3 of the 4 heavenly kings. As expected, when the 3 of them heard this, they were enraged. Some of them were about to attack, but they were stopped by one of the older ones. This person was the leader of the 4 heavenly kings, the Thunder King. These 3 heavenly kings were the Thunder King, Wind King, and Water King. Together with the Fire King, they formed the camp of the 4 heavenly kings. They were the cream of the crop after genetic modification, and each of them had a set of superb skills. So what if you have a sharp tongue? In any case, you won't be able to escape today even if you have wings. The Thunder King said with killing intent. Tang Zheng was unmoved. He swept a disdainful glance at the other party and said, "With just you guys? Tang Zheng, you think you're number 1 under the heavens just because other people think you're number 1? Let me tell you, this time we came prepared. If you dare to resist, then you will be going against this country." The Thunder King said solemnly. "Going against the country?" Tang Zheng's expression turned cold. "Can your dragon group represent the country?" The Thunder King said confidently, "Perhaps not in the past, but today, at this very moment, the dragon group represents the country. If you resist, then you will be going against the country. I am not joking with you. Actually, I would be more happy if you resist, because then you will definitely die today. I am very happy to see this kind of scene." Tang Zheng stared unblinkingly into the Thunder King's eyes, confirming that he was not lying. His heart thumped. Something must have happened during this period of time that caused the dragon group status to rise greatly. Otherwise, the other party would not be so unrestrained. But could it be that he was just going to follow them? The dragon group was not a benevolent group. As long as he fell into their hands, it would be like a lamb entering the tiger's den. Even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. Seeing Tang Zheng's expression change, the Thunder King said with killing intent, "There is no time for you to consider. Since you are not going to surrender, then we will take action directly. Resist as much as you want. The more you resist, the more people you kill, and the happier I will be." As if trying to goad him, these words caused Tang Zheng's eyelids to twitch. Flames of fury shot up within him. In the blink of an eye, the Thunder King waved his hand, and the other super soldiers charged forward. In an instant, the airport was in chaos, and screams rang out everywhere. This kind of scene was rare, and there were still many people who stopped to watch. Tang Zheng had originally wanted to call Xu Yingtian to clarify things, but the other party's movements were too fast. Before he could take out his phone, the attack had already reached him. Tang Zheng frowned deeply, weighing the pros and cons. In the end, He decided not to take a loss for the time being. Otherwise, if he fell into the other party's hands, he would be at their mercy. "Do it," he called out in a low voice. Just as he was about to counterattack with his martial arts, he heard a thunderous voice ring out. "Stop, all of you stop. I want to see who dares to make a move today. Then I will definitely make him regret being born into this world." This voice was crude and filled with an explosive aura. However, it was as if it had a magical power, causing everyone to subconsciously stop what they were doing. The three heavenly kings frowned at the same time. Today, the three of them had made a move together, and that meant that they had a plan in mind. If Tang Zheng resisted, the three of them would work together to capture him, or even kill him directly. This was Xing Feng's plan. It was a pity that an unforeseen event had suddenly occurred. If they wanted to carry out this plan, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. Moreover, there was a possibility that they would achieve the opposite of what they wanted. Even the three heavenly kings could not bear this responsibility. Another group of people charged in, and like a spear, they charged at the people from the dragon group, causing them to sway unsteadily and fall into disarray. A tall figure came before Tang Zheng, frowning as he looked him up and down. Then, he thumped heavily on his chest, and said, "You brat, you really make people worry." Tang Zheng smiled slightly, and said, "Chief Shu, you came just in time. I had no choice but to come in time. Do you think I don't know your temper? If I had come just a little later, you would have directly torn down this airport. That would have been a huge mess." As he said that, Xu Yingtian glanced at the people from the dragon group, and said, "Wouldn't that be fulfilling their wishes? I won't just stand by and watch this kind of thing happen." The Thunder King's expression changed slightly, and he walked out, furiously saying, "Chief Shu, Tang Zheng is someone that our boss specifically wants. Are you trying to stop us and go against the dragon group with such a big lineup?" Xu Yingtian glanced at the other party in disdain, and said, "Who do you think you are to dare speak to me like that?" The Thunder King's face alternated between red and white as he roared furiously, "Xu Yingtian, don't go too far." Xu Yingtian ignored the Thunder King, and said, "Go back and tell your boss that if he wants to touch Tang Zheng, he will have to go through me first." "Hold it right there." Seeing that the other party was about to leave, the Thunder King quickly blocked his path. The others also moved, and the Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau were in a standoff. The flames of war seemed to be on the verge of erupting. Xu Yingtian's expression did not change as he stared coldly at the Thunder King, and said, "You want to stop me? Don't blame me for being merciless. Xu Yingtian, you should know that Tang Zheng is someone that the higher-ups specifically want. If you dare to take him away, that would be disobeying orders," the Thunder King said in exasperation. Xu Yingtian pursed his lips, and said, "The higher-ups? You want to use this to suppress me? Let me tell you, when I use this move, you won't even know where you are. Before you want to stop me, you'd better call your boss and ask for instructions. Otherwise, you'll suffer a loss and have no one to reason with." Xu Yingtian's aura was strong, and his entire body was exuding a tyrannical aura. The Thunder King did not dare to underestimate him at all. Seeing him make such a solemn vow, the Thunder King felt a little guilty, and he took out his phone to make a call. "Yes, I got it." After speaking for a while, the Thunder King's expression turned ugly. As he spoke, he raised his head to look at Tang Zheng and Xu Yingtian, seemingly unwilling to accept this. Chapter 7:12. The Thunder Emperor glared at Tang Zheng and gnashed his teeth. "We're not finished." After that, he turned around and left with his subordinates. Xu Yingtian looked at the other party's departing figure with ridicule. When the other party was far away, his face sank. The Dragon Group is becoming more and more unrestrained. They even dared to touch a consultant from the National Security Bureau. Tang Zheng relaxed and asked, "It seems that there have been many changes in the country recently." Xu Yingtian bitterly smiled and shook his head. "It's a long story. Let's leave this place first." The group left the departure hall in a grandiose manner and took several cars to a military cargo plane in the airport. The military plane roared as it flew into the blue sky. Only then did the group feel slightly relieved. Xu Yingtian looked at Tang Jing with a burning gaze and asked with a solemn expression, "Now you can tell me what you did in the island nation." "I'm all ears." Tang Jing gently caressed Xiao Bai. He had already removed the illusion on Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai was lying on his lap and didn't care about the curious gazes of others. Tang Jing organized his words and spoke. This time, he didn't hide the news of Wu Junshan's group. After all, the Li Palace already knew about this matter. It wasn't easy to hide it from the government. As expected, Xu Yingtian wasn't surprised when he heard the news of Wu Junshan's group. Clearly, he already knew about this matter. Furthermore, a trace of gratification flashed across his face. However, when he heard that the Li Palace had colluded with the island nation and betrayed Wu Junshan's group, Xu Yingtian's face sank. Almost everyone in Huaxia, including those in the government, didn't have a good impression of the island nation. This was because of history. The Li Palace had actually colluded with the island nation to harm Wu Junshan's group. This was truly infuriating. After all, Wu Junshan's group was a part of Huaxia. This was equivalent to colluding with the enemy and harming their own people. However, there were too many factors involved. Xu Yingtian didn't immediately express his opinion. In the end, when he heard the inside story of the Yamato no Orochi and the war decades ago, Xu Yingtian couldn't sit still any longer. He slapped the armrest of the chair, shattering it into pieces. Tang Zheng had already expected that he would have this kind of reaction. Any Chinese person with a bit of courage would have the same reaction after hearing the truth. Damned Japanese, so they actually concocted such a big scheme and even killed so many Chinese compatriots. Xu Yingtian angrily roared. Tang Zheng calmly said, "Now that you know the truth, how do you evaluate my actions in the island nation?" Xu Yingtian was startled. He understood the meaning of Tang Zheng's words. His expression was somewhat complicated as he sighed. "As an official, I obviously don't want you to do such an extreme thing. But as a Huaxia person, I can't help but clap my hands in joy. What you've done is too damn satisfying." Xu Yingtian heavily slapped Tang Zheng's shoulder and continued, "Although I'm an official, I'm first and foremost a Huaxia person. Those people in the Imperial Advisor's residence and the Imperial Palace all deserve to die. They should die without a burial site." Tang Zheng looked at him with gratification and said, "I didn't misjudge you." Xu Yingtian revealed a bitter smile and sighed, "The new generation excels the old. The secret of decades has been discovered by you. Humph, let's see how the island nation can be arrogant now." "Oh." Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. The island nation must have already found out my identity, so they're pressuring the country, right? Xu Yingtian nodded his head. The island nation's attitude is firm, so they're under a lot of pressure. "What do they want?" "Of course they want us to hand you over. Otherwise, why would the Dragon Group send so many people to capture you?" "But the Dragon Group isn't the only one in the country. There are still many righteous and unyielding people." Tang Zheng recalled the scene from before and curiously asked, "Why did the Dragon Group suddenly compromise?" "Because I invited a big shot to reject the Dragon Group's previous proposal." Xu Yingtian pretended to be mysterious as he said, "Big shot? Who?" Tang Zheng curiously asked. Xu Yingtian laughed and purposely kept him in suspense. "This is a secret for now. You'll naturally know when you see him." Tang Zheng was filled with suspicion as he looked out the window and asked, "I forgot to ask you, where are we going?" "Of course it's the capital. Didn't you buy a ticket to go to the capital?" "All right, then I'd like to see who this big shot you're talking about is." Tang Zheng did not ask further. The plane whistled through the clouds. In just a few hours, the plane landed at a military airport on the outskirts of the capital. An off-road vehicle carrying Tang Zheng, Wu, and Xu Yingtian sped towards the center of the city. Looking at the familiar scenery and streets outside the window, the weather was already hot. The streets were filled with people wearing cool clothes, and the beauties began to reveal their slender snow-white thighs, attracting the men's gazes. The off-road vehicle drove straight into the center of the capital. Tang Zheng's pupils constricted as he stared at the building in front of him. This building was not tall, but rather, it was a little short in the capital that was filled with tall buildings. However, as a person from Huaxia, No one dared to look down on this place. This place was much more powerful than those skyscrapers, because this represented the center of Hua Xia's power. Any Hua Xia person who came here couldn't help but feel a little apprehensive, or even reverent. Even Tang Zheng was no exception. After all, he was a secular person who had received more than 10 years of traditional education. Even though his strength had greatly increased in the past year and he had experienced many major events, some of the genes hidden in his bones could not be changed in a short period of time. On the other hand, Wu was unperturbed. He glanced outside and then closed his eyes to rest. Even his mood did not fluctuate in the slightest. Power, in her eyes, was really ephemeral. She had been taught to despise secular power since she was young. This was a world of difference from Tang Zheng. As if sensing his mood, Xu Yingtian said, "Don't be nervous, there are also people living here. Moreover, in terms of individual strength, you are stronger than any of them." Tang Zheng revealed a wry smile, took a deep breath, suppressed the fear in his heart, and said, "It's my first time here, so it's difficult to avoid the customs." Xu Yingtian chuckled in satisfaction at Tang Zheng's bluntness, and said, "The first time I came here, I was even more nervous than you. My hands were trembling, and my legs were almost unable to take a step. In the end, when I went back, I found that my vest was full of sweat, and my clothes were as if they had been fished out of the water. Is it that exaggerated?" Tang Zheng sneered. Although he was in awe of the power here, it was not to that extent. "It's not exaggerated at all. I'm still considered good. There are people who are so weak that they can't even walk. Your condition is already very good," Xu Yingtian praised. After hearing his words, Tang Zheng's remaining trace of nervousness gradually disappeared. He loosened his shoulders, and instead felt a kind of unprecedented ease. Seeing his change, Xu Yingtian's eyes flashed with a strange light. He secretly praised him. A dragon among men, as expected, extraordinary. This change was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. The off-road vehicle passed through a strict inspection and passed through a series of armed guards before finally entering the central area of this power center. Most of the buildings here were courtyards or 2- or 3-story buildings. These buildings were hidden in the greenery. Although there was already a trace of summer in the sky, when one was in this space, one's whole body was emitting a cool feeling. A cool breeze brushed past one's face, and it was incomparably comfortable. The few of them got out of the car, and Xu Yingtian led the 2 people and 1 beast into one of the courtyards with ease. Tang Zheng could not help but size up. The Ye family's residence in the capital was also a courtyard, and it occupied a larger area than this courtyard. However, Tang Zheng felt that this courtyard was far more formidable than the Ye family's, especially the few powerful auras in the dark, which made Tang Zheng's heart involuntarily tremble a few times. What a tight security force! Tang Zheng secretly praised. The security here was even tighter than the imperial palace of the island nation. Although there were many masters in the imperial palace, there were very few true masters. However, judging from the auras that Tang Zheng felt just now, there were definitely no less than 3 masters. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth raised. They had really mobilized a lot of people. Were they afraid that they would not be able to control him and prevent him from harming people? But on second thought, he was relieved. If any one of the people living here had an accident, it would be a major event no less than an earthquake for the country of Huaxia. It would affect the development and strategy of the entire country and affect thousands of families. Indeed, they couldn't be careless. Of course, from the difference in the strength of the guards, it could be seen that Hua Xia's foundation was far from what the island nation could compare to. What was extremely laughable was that the island nation still did not give up and tried to start a war with Hua Xia again. "Wu, you and Xiao Bai need to stay in this room for the time being." The few of them entered a small room, and Xu Yingtian said solemnly. At this moment, his brows were filled with the seriousness of official business. When Wu heard this, he immediately frowned and looked towards Tang Zheng. "I want to bring Tang Zheng to see an important figure. He's the only one, I don't have the authority to bring anyone else in." Xu Yingtian said honestly. Wu still did not say anything, but his brows were knitted tighter and tighter. The atmosphere was somewhat tense. Tang Zheng roughly guessed Xu Yingtian's thoughts, and said, "Wu, you and Xiaobai stay here, I'll be back soon." When Wu heard this, his brows immediately relaxed, and his eyes became gentle, like a pool of autumn water, causing Xu Yingtian to be speechless. When did Wu become so docile and obedient? He looked deeply at Tang Zheng. How many more surprises would this brat give him? Tang Zheng and Xu Yingtian walked out together, passed through a courtyard, and arrived at a study room. They knocked on the door and entered, and a room full of books greeted their eyes. Although it was Tang Zheng's first time here, he could clearly feel that the books on the bookshelves were definitely not used as decorations to show off, but were frequently flipped through. It could be seen how astonishing the reading volume of the owner of this place was. Chapter 713. This back view often appeared on television news and in various news reports. Most of the citizens had a deep impression of it. Tang Zheng was no exception. Although the other party had yet to turn around, Tang Zheng had already guessed his identity. He couldn't help but be stunned. Why was he here to see him? Who was this person? It was the person who had a meeting with Xu Yingtian, Xing Feng, and the others some time ago. He was one of the people at the top of the power pyramid in Huaxia, the bureau chief of the central government, an absolute big shot. Compared to him, all the officials rumored to be in charge of the borders were insignificant. Hearing the footsteps, the bureau chief turned around. His bright and imposing gaze swept past Tang Zheng. He nodded without batting an eyelid and said, "Heroes come from the young. It's true that heroes come from the young. You've done such a big thing at such a young age." Although his words were good, there was a hint of reproach in them. Xu Yingtian was an old hand in the bureaucracy. How could he not tell? His heart couldn't help but skip a beat as he thought to himself, "This is bad." Tang Zheng didn't think about the deeper meaning of the other party's words. His expression didn't change. Although the other party's identity was out of Tang Zheng's expectations, the respect he had when he first came in had unknowingly disappeared. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Thank you for the compliment. This is what I should do." Clearly, he didn't think that what he had done in the island nation was wrong. He took the other party's words as genuine praise. Hearing that, the bureau chief's thick brows immediately furrowed. His gaze turned sharp as he stared straight at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was also someone who had been through a lot. The bureau chief's halo was useful to ordinary people, but not to Tang Zheng. Therefore, Tang Zheng calmly looked straight into the bureau chief's eyes. Their gazes met, and the study was terrifyingly silent. The air seemed to have frozen. Xu Yingtian's breathing was almost out of control. He rolled his eyes and lamented to himself, "Why did I forget to give Tang Zheng a heads up just now? This is too rash and will only backfire." But at this moment, he had no way of reminding Tang Zheng. The corner of Xu Yingtian's mouth twitched a few times. He tasted bitterness in his mouth, but there was nothing he could do. "Chimph, what should I do? You actually feel that it's quite glorious." The bureau chief didn't seem to approve of Tang Zheng's attitude. Tang Zheng said calmly, "Of course, killing the enemy is part of our duty. Moreover, the other party has committed many crimes in Huaxia. This is just the interest collected from them. That's an old story. Is that so? You think you can forget the past just because you're an adult? History is meant to be remembered, not forgotten." Tang Zheng wasn't afraid in the slightest and said firmly. Xu Yingtian's jaw almost dropped to the ground. He really wanted to rush up and cover Wang Jing's mouth, praying that he would stop talking nonsense. History is meant to be remembered, not forgotten. The bureau chief's expression changed slightly as he repeated this sentence. He looked at Tang Zheng with a hint of approval in his eyes. Today's society was too impetuous. Everyone was looking forward and risking their lives for money and status. There were very few people who had this kind of awareness of the big picture, or this kind of spirit. Without a doubt, Tang Zheng's words touched the bureau chief. But the bureau chief didn't give up. He still said in a deep voice, "But everything has to be done in a certain way. If you mess around like this, you will only end up in a passive position and disrupt the established steps." Tang Zheng didn't give in at all. He said stubbornly, But sometimes the arrow has to be shot. Island Nation has 2 malignant tumors, Yamato no Orochi and the Imperial Tutor's residence. If we don't get rid of them, there will be endless troubles in the future. Imperial Tutor's residence, Yamato no Orochi? The bureau chief frowned. He was no stranger to the Imperial Tutor's residence. After all, the National Security Bureau had a lot of information on the Imperial Tutor's residence. But it was the first time he heard of Yamato no Orochi. Tang Zheng didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Xu Yingtian. Xu Yingtian understood tacitly. He knew that Tang Zheng wanted him to introduce the situation and give him the opportunity to show his face. He couldn't help but feel grateful. He quickly organized his words and introduced the situation of Yamato no Orochi. As expected, the bureau chief and Xu Yingtian had the same reaction. Especially when it came to the conspiracy of the war decades ago, his eyes were obviously burning with anger. Seeing that ball of anger, Tang Zheng was secretly relieved. If the country's leader could still maintain this sense of pride and honor for history, then this country had a lot of hope. There's such a thing. It was the bureau chief's first time hearing about this inside story. He stared at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng nodded seriously. I can guarantee the authenticity of this information. The bureau chief nodded seriously and looked at Xu Yingtian. Xu Yingtian had an idea and said, then we can use this to change the situation this time. Obviously, he wanted to use this to make a fuss. After all, the island nation was already putting pressure on Hua Xia to make Hua Xia hand over Tang Zheng. The bureau chief also saw through Xu Yingtian's thoughts. He didn't comment. Tang Zheng did not care about what the two of them were thinking and said to himself, I haven't finished speaking yet. This is only a part of the news. There is another piece of news that is even more important. I think you guys are more interested in hearing it. What? My guess is that the 8-headed serpent has already been subdued by the 100 transformations Star-Lord. These two fellows are together, colluding with each other. The consequences will be extremely terrifying, and it is definitely not something you want to see. Tang Zheng said in a heavy tone. Actually, he didn't want to see this result either. Although this news hadn't been confirmed, he completely believed it. 100 Faces Star-Lord. The bureau chief's eyelids twitched, and his expression changed slightly. His big reaction was enough to show the magic power of the name 100 Faces Star-Lord. Back then, what happened in the 100,000 Mountains was not a secret. The government had already inquired about most of it through various channels. Later on, they even sent elite troops to barge into the 100,000 Mountains, but without exception, they were all annihilated. Among them, the scattered news that was sent back was that 100 Faces Star-Lord was very terrifying. The 100,000 Mountains had become the territory of monsters, and those who barged in would definitely die. After countless failures and sacrifices, the government finally gave up on the idea of sending people into the 100,000 Mountains. But the name 100 Faces Star-Lord was like a nightmare. It spread among the upper echelons of power, and the few big bosses heard it like thunder. Xu Yingtian also looked at Tang Zheng in shock. After hearing this news, his heart couldn't help but beat faster. 100 Faces Star-Lord had already made them helpless. If Yamato no Orochi was added, it would definitely be a huge disaster. Then wouldn't they immediately attack us? Xu Yingtian asked in a hoarse voice. Tang Zheng had also been thinking about this problem. After a few days of thinking, he rejected this idea. He shook his head and said, no. Why? The other two looked at Tang Zheng curiously, as they were curious about this answer that was out of their expectations. Because they have a bigger plan. My intuition is that they won't act rashly before this plan succeeds. This was the conclusion that Tang Zheng came to from 100 Faces Star-Lord's reaction of biding his time for such a long time. He believed in his own results. A bigger plan? What's that? Tang Zheng didn't intend to reveal this news at first. But after seeing the bureau chief, he changed his mind. Perhaps letting the government know this news would be more effective in stopping 100 Faces Star-Lord's plan. Use the Mountain River blood sacrifice array formed by tens of thousands of people to bring the Devil Clan back to this world, Tang Zheng said in a deep voice. Swoosh swoosh. As soon as this was said, The two of them changed their expressions. They were no stranger to the term Devil Clan. They knew what the Devil Clan represented. They represented slaughter and blood. If the Devil Clan descended, then this world would really be finished. The bureau chief couldn't help but grab Tang Zheng's hand and ask, "Will the Devil Clan really descend to this world?" Tang Zheng said honestly, "It's possible, as long as 100 Faces Star-Lord's plan succeeds." That mountain river blood sacrifice array? Yes, this formation is extremely bloody and vicious. It requires the lives and blood of tens of thousands of people as a catalyst to activate the formation and bring the demon clan back from the skies beyond. Tang Zheng's voice couldn't help but become heavy. He couldn't imagine what would happen to this world after the Devil Clan descended. How do we stop him? The bureau chief asked directly. Use all the information we have to search for the missing people in various places and stop 100 Faces Star-Lord from finding so many victims. Xu Yingtian asked worriedly, "Will it work?" Tang Zheng wasn't very confident. He said helplessly, "Do your best and leave the rest to fate." No. How can this world be destroyed by 100 Faces Star-Lord? We can't be so lucky. What do you mean do your best and leave the rest to fate? That's too negative. We have to deal with it actively. Xu Yingtian, I give you full authority to mobilize any resources to investigate the entire country. We can't neglect any missing people. We have to investigate to the end. The bureau chief gave a strict order. Yes. Xu Yingtian straightened his body and said passionately. He couldn't hide the excitement between his brows. During the last meeting, he was almost in despair. Tang Zheng's actions caused the country to be in a passive position. Furthermore, with Xing Feng fanning the flames, his situation became even worse. Many people even directly sentenced his career and life to death. But he didn't give up. He finally convinced the bureau chief to meet Tang Zheng. He even brought Tang Zheng over personally. Fortunately, he arrived in time and stopped the conflict between Tang Zheng and the Dragon Group. Otherwise, when the bureau chief heard about the conflict between Tang Zheng and the Dragon Group, he would have given up on meeting Tang Zheng. There wouldn't have been so many things that followed. Xu Yingtian heaved a sigh of relief. But he didn't show it. His face was still serious. Tang Zheng didn't know that his unintentional actions had a positive impact on the country. And it was a positive impact that affected thousands of families. Originally, the problem of human trafficking in the country was not stopped. But because the country increased its efforts to investigate missing people, many missing people were found in time and reunited with their families. There were many women and children among them. Chapter 714. The bureau chief looked at Tang Zheng sternly and asked, "As a cultivator, you have a special identity. Do you have any suggestions?" Tang Zheng's heart moved, and he asked the question that had been buried in his heart for a long time. "How does the country view cultivators?" Hiss. Xu Yingtian sucked in a breath of cold air. This question was too direct. The bureau chief was calm and said, "Cultivators and martial artists are the same. They are also part of society. A few hundred years ago, cultivators were expelled. That was because people were limited by their knowledge and experience. Now that technology is advanced, many things are different. Cultivators can also exist in this world like martial artists." Tang Zheng was happy. It seemed that the government's attitude towards cultivators was much more open-minded. They didn't just suppress them. However, cultivators are too special. Or rather, they are too powerful. If too many of them exist in this world, there will be many problems. The bureau chief added. Tang Zheng's head thumped. It was as if a bucket of cold water was poured on his head. His excitement was extinguished. He smiled bitterly. He was too naive. He really thought that the government would accept all cultivators. At least with the current situation, it was impossible. Greater than or equal to cultivators were too powerful. Especially Tang Zheng's action this time, the government had directly witnessed the power of cultivators. Cultivators were like nuclear bombs. They were very powerful. If they were within a controlled range, they would be beneficial to the country. If they were completely out of control, they would definitely be a very unstable factor. That was to say, if a small number of cultivators existed, the country wouldn't interfere too much. If they allowed a large number of cultivators to return, the government wouldn't sit by and do nothing. Of course, there was another layer of meaning in the bureau chief's words. Tang Zheng also figured it out. The bureau chief emphasized on technology. That was to say, it wasn't a few hundred years ago. The government had no way to deal with cultivators. The power of technology couldn't be underestimated. Not to mention nuclear bombs, the mecha developed by the Dragon Group couldn't be underestimated. There were also super soldiers. No one could be sure that super soldiers wouldn't be weaker than cultivators in the future. Also, super soldiers could be mass-produced. That would be a very terrifying force. The bureau chief's words were a combination of kindness and authority, which gave Tang Zheng a lot of insights. However, he was not as enthusiastic as Qian Chanzi about the return of the large group of cultivators. He had already determined that if the large group of cultivators returned, it would not be of much benefit to the ordinary people. What he considered was not the stability of the regime, but the benefits to the general public. Both sides had different starting points, but they could be considered to have reached the same conclusion. Thus, Tang Zheng solemnly nodded and said, "Cultivators will not harm the country, but I hope that the country will not judge people with colored glasses, or sooner or later there will be problems." As soon as he said this, Xu Yingtian's back was drenched in sweat. These words were too bold. It was equivalent to threatening the other party, telling the government not to go too far. Otherwise, the cultivators would also resist. No one had ever dared to say such things in front of the chief. Xu Yingtian was secretly anxious for Tang Zheng. Newborn calves were not afraid of tigers. The bureau chief looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. Their eyes met, and after a long time, the bureau chief took the initiative to reach out his hand and simply said, "Okay." The two hands tightly held together, and it could be considered that they had reached a preliminary consensus. Xu Yingtian brought Tang Zheng out of the study and said in a low voice, "You are so bold. You scared me to death just now. I almost had a heart attack." Tang Zheng smiled indifferently. "Is it so exaggerated?" "Of course. You don't know, but if there is really a disagreement, there are countless experts in the dark who are not to be trifled with." Xu Yingtian said with a bitter smile. "I am not to be trifled with either." Tang Zheng said quietly. If the other party really wanted to kill him, he would not sit still and wait for death. In the end, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. If Xu Yingtian knew his true thoughts, he would probably be so scared that he would hide far away. Seeing Tang Zheng's disapproving expression, Xu Yingtian only hoped to bring them away from this place as soon as possible. Suddenly, a person walked in front of them. The two of them were startled, and their expressions became somewhat unsightly. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. They actually met Xing Feng here. Xing Feng strode towards the two of them and stopped in front of them. He coldly looked at Tang Zheng and said, "This time, consider yourself lucky. You managed to get away with it." Tang Zheng looked at the other party in ridicule and said, "Xing Feng, to be honest, when I first saw you, I really did not expect that you would have today. Otherwise, when we were in Dianan, you would have died long ago." Xing Feng's pupils shrank and said, "I still have to thank you. If not for you, I would not have today's achievements." This was the truth. Back then, Xing Feng was just a general in the army in Dianan. He still had to look up to Long Shenyuan. But now, he was the leader of the Dragon Group, and the power of the Long family was no longer a threat to him. "Then we will meet again. Let's see who will have the last laugh." Tang Zheng did not waste time with the other party and directly said it out loud. "Then let's wait and see." Xing Feng coldly snorted, walked past the two of them, and strode away. Turning his head to look at his back, Tang Zheng frowned and said, "The chief summoned him?" Xu Yingtian sighed and said, "The situation of the Dragon Group and the National Security Bureau as equals has already formed. Especially this time, the Dragon Group was one step ahead of the National Security Bureau in reporting the island nation's information, causing the National Security Bureau to be very passive. The Dragon Group is in the limelight. I've implicated you." Tang Zheng patted Xu Yingtian's shoulder. What's there to be polite about? My point of view is the same as yours. The dragon group won't be able to jump around for long, especially since Xingfeng is too high profile. Furthermore, he has the final say in the dragon group. The two of them returned to the hut, picked up Wu and Xiao Bai, and left this heavily guarded place together. When they were about to part ways, Xu Yingtian pulled Tang Zheng and asked in a low voice, I still have a question in my heart. Where did you place Wu Junshan and the others? Wu Junshan and the others were a force that could not be underestimated, but it was as if they had disappeared from the face of the earth. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously and did not answer. He held Wu's hand and quickly disappeared in front of Xu Yingtian's eyes. Xu Yingtian shook his head. There was nothing he could do. In the same study room, the head sat on a chair behind the desk. Xingfeng carefully sat on the sofa and looked at the head in awe. The Li Palace has already sent back news. The Li Palace Master has already explained the matter of the island nation. This is only a personal grudge between the Li Palace and Wu Junshan and the others. It does not involve the country, so they used the power of the island nation. Before this, they did not know about the matter of the Yamata no Orokai. It turned out that before Tang Zheng could say the truth, the Li Palace had already contacted the Dragon Group and explained the matter of the island nation. They wanted to remove the Li Palace from this matter and reduce the country's hostility towards the Li Palace. Hearing this, the head's face turned cold. Personal grudge, HMPH. Xingfeng's heart thumped. The head was really angry. The actions of the Li Palace were contrary to the country's wishes. It was truly infuriating. Head, I believe that the Li Palace Master is not someone who does not know how to adapt to the situation. He would not do such a disgraceful thing as colluding with the enemy. Although he knew that the other party was angry, Xingfeng still had to bite the bullet and explain for the Li Palace. The head coldly looked at Xingfeng. Xingfeng hurriedly lowered his head and said, the Dragon Group has conducted a detailed investigation of the Li Palace. What they said should be true. Furthermore, the Dragon Group has already begun to infiltrate the Li Palace. In time, this mysterious force will also be used by the country. The Dragon Group infiltrated the Li Palace. Xingfeng really dared to do something that had never happened before. The bureau chief glanced at Xingfeng with gratification. Xingfeng had many shortcomings, but there was one thing that Xu Yingtian couldn't compare to. Xu Yingtian's thinking was much more rigid, while Xingfeng was very daring and would often do many unexpected things. The infiltration this time was one of them, and it had enlightened the higher-ups. The few large organizations were impenetrable, and they were not controlled by the government. This made the government very passive. If this continued, it was hard to guarantee that nothing would happen in the future. Xingfeng's suggestion was exactly what the higher-ups wanted. That was why they valued him more and more. They even turned a blind eye to the fact that he had the final say in the Dragon Group. The head's expression finally looked better. He nodded approvingly and said, follow up on this matter closely. Yes. Xingfeng hesitated for a while, then said hesitantly, Tang Zheng's matter. Put aside your feud with Tang Zheng for now. Tang Zheng is a force that can be won over. The head had made his judgment. Even if Xingfeng had thousands of words to say, there was nothing he could do. Understood. Xingfeng accepted the order dejectedly. How's the progress on the Tree of Life? The head asked. Xingfeng said dejectedly, there's no progress. This is all Tang Zheng's fault. I don't know what method he used, but we can't even get close to the Tree of Life. He has ulterior motives. Xingfeng seemed to have found another entry point to attack Tang Zheng. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by the head. This matter needs to be considered at length. The research on the Tree of Life cannot be stopped, but we can't become enemies with Tang Zheng because of this. Xingfeng's words were blocked again. It was as if someone was strangling his throat. There was nothing he could do. Tang Zheng didn't know how many times he had been on the verge of danger. He was almost killed by Xingfeng's scheming. He returned home with Marshall. But when he opened the door, he wondered if he had walked into the wrong house. Was this still his home? He didn't dare to admit it. His home in the past wasn't bad, But it was completely different from what he saw now. His home now was like a palace. Although it was a 2-bedroom room, the smell was completely different. It was completely renovated and decorated. There were all kinds of decorations. Even Tang Zheng, a layman, could tell that it wasn't ordinary. Of course, he didn't know that these materials, furniture, and decorations were all flown over from Sweden. The renovation cost was more than the price of buying this house. Marshall also looked at everything in front of her in disbelief and said, "Did we go the wrong way?" Chapter 7:15. Tang Zheng and Wu strode in. Since they didn't go wrong, they couldn't just enter and not enter. Wu looked around curiously. She had to admit that Princess Anne's taste was indeed extraordinary. Even someone like her, who didn't know anything about decorations, could see the extraordinary charm. Tang Zheng couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "If I were to come back in a while, I'm afraid this place would have become a real palace." Wu said with a gloomy face, "This kind of woman is really powerful. What's so great about that? This is the education she received since she was young, just like how you know martial arts." Tang Zheng said disapprovingly, "Really? Of course. Dong dong dong." While they were talking, the crisp sound of high heels hitting the ground rang out, followed by a beautiful voice. "Ah, Tang Zheng, you're back." As soon as she finished speaking, a figure flew over like a gust of wind. If not for Tang Zheng moving to the side, she would have directly pounced on Tang Zheng. If this person wasn't Princess Anne, who else could it be? Princess Anne was still perfect and flawless, causing people's hearts to palpitate. She stared at Tang Zheng with a pair of big black eyes, looking at him in pleasant surprise. During this period of time, not only did her life as a commoner not consume her noble temperament, it made her seem even more outstanding, like the most noble and holy white swan in the world. "You're finally back. I thought you would never come back after leaving without saying goodbye," Princess Anne said happily. Tang Zheng pointed to the house with a straight face and asked, "What did you do to me? Is it beautiful?" Princess Annie showed off excitedly, just like a child showing off the fruits of her labor to an adult. "These are all carefully designed by me. Every piece of decoration was personally selected by me. They were flown in from Sweden. I guarantee that they are absolutely authentic." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and said, "Is there a need for that?" "Of course it is necessary. Home is the most important place for us to live in. If we aren't satisfied with it, then we won't have the energy to work and study all day, so this is necessary." Princess Anne nodded and said solemnly. Tang Zheng was speechless. According to his understanding, a home was a place to put one's soul. A simple house was enough. There was no need to be so luxurious. There was indeed a world of difference between a princess and a commoner. "You came back at the right time. I've been in Huaxia for so long, but I've never had the chance to take a good look around the capital. Every day, I have to juggle between school and home. I'm getting tired of it," Princess Anne grumbled. "No time." Tang Zheng refused without hesitation. Princess Anne was not angry. She rolled her eyes and slyly said, "If you promise me, then I will tell you something very important." "What is it?" "Promise me and I'll tell you. If you don't want to say it, then forget it." Tang Zheng was not going to fall for it. Okay, I'll tell you." Princess Anne compromised. "Yi Dingdang is sick." "What?" Tang Zheng was shocked. "I knew you would be interested." Princess Anne proudly said, "Ever since you silently disappeared, she has been sick." Tang Zheng did not say anything and rushed out the door. "Stop. Where are you going?" Princess Anne shouted. "I'm going to look for Ding Dang." To tell the truth, when he heard that Yi Ding Dang was seriously ill, Tang Zheng's heart felt as if it had been hollowed out. Worry surged in, accompanied by a strong sense of self-blame. "Come back, you don't have to go. She has already recovered." Princess Anne quickly said. "Recovered? Of course, you disappeared for so long. If she was sick for so long, then wouldn't it be very serious? Then what kind of illness does she have?" Princess Anne shook her head. "I don't know, but I heard from their roommates that it should be related to you." "Related to me?" Tang Zheng felt a pain in his heart as he remembered the last time they parted. Yi Dingdang's determination to leave the table in the middle of the night, as well as the intense pain in her eyes, even a blind person could see it clearly. It would be strange if she wasn't angry and sad that he had disappeared for no reason. Therefore, her illness was most likely caused by him. Thinking to this point, Tang Zheng could not stand still any longer and said to Marshall, "Go to my room to rest, I'll leave for a while." Although Marshall knew what Tang Zheng was going to do, she did not stop him. She had thousands of voices in her heart that wanted to stop Tang Zheng, but in the end, she did not say anything. "Hey, don't go. I've already told you. You have to accompany me to the capital." Princess and did not have any worries and straightforwardly called out. Tang Zheng did not even turn his head as he turned a deaf ear and disappeared through the door, leaving behind the two women looking at each other in dismay. Princess and fiercely stomped her feet and said, "If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have told him this news. I ran away so quickly like a rabbit." With that, he turned his gaze and fixed it on Marshall. The corner of his mouth slightly raised as he asked with interest, "You are Marshall, right?" Marshall proudly raised his head and did not answer. He directly walked towards Tang Zheng's room. "Wow, you have a personality." Princess Anne's eyes lit up. She had never been a person who followed the rules and regulations. She was a typical rebel amongst the princesses of the royal family. Seeing martial arts being so cold, she did not feel offended. Instead, she was interested. "It's almost time for dinner. It must be over. I'll treat you to a meal." Princess Anne took the initiative to express her goodwill. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be overjoyed. They would feel that it was their greatest honor. But Marshall did not take this lying down. He turned around and left. With a bang, he closed the door, leaving Princess Anne to stare. She smacked her lips. She did not feel offended. Instead, she praised from the bottom of her heart, "Such a girl with a personality is really too interesting. It seems that we will be living under the same roof in the future. That's great. Oh, no, doesn't this mean that Tang Zheng is going to live with Marshall?" Her face instantly darkened, and the light in her eyes also disappeared in an instant. Tang Zheng anxiously rushed to school but was told that Yi Dingdang had gone home. Thus, under the complaints of Yi Dingdang's 3 roommates, he hurriedly rushed towards the Ye family. The Ye family's courtyard house was serene and quiet. However, it was completely different from the courtyard house that Tang Zheng previously went to. He did not rush into the Ye family's entrance because he was stopped at the entrance. He was already considered a frequent guest of the Ye family. How could the guards at the entrance not recognize him? However, he was still stopped. Tang Zheng suspiciously raised his eyebrows and asked, "What's going on with you guys?" "Sorry, the Ye family does not welcome you," the guard stiffly said. "Does not welcome me? Did you recognize the wrong person?" Tang Zheng asked in confusion. "Of course we recognize you. We would still recognize you even if you turned into ashes." The guard unhappily said, "Aren't you Tang Zheng? The one we are stopping is you. The Ye family does not welcome you." This. Tang Zheng was speechless. Just what happened? How could there be such a big change in the blink of an eye? No, he had to see Yi Dingdang. Otherwise, he would not be able to sleep and eat in peace. "If you want to stop me, then don't blame me for being impolite." Tang Zheng was ready to force his way in. With a push of his hands, the guard was no match for him. With a bang, he slammed into the door and could no longer block his way. Tang Zheng rushed into the Ye family. In an instant, many people gathered from all directions and shouted angrily, "Stop! Do you think the Ye family is a place where you can come and go as you please? Stop right there." The crowd attacked and Tang Zheng immediately fell into a sea of people. Seeing that he could not move forward, Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety and anger. "Since that's the case, then don't blame me for being impolite." Bang bang bang, his figure flashed and palm shadows flew. The people in front of him were sent flying one by one. After a while, there was no one who could stand up. Tang Zheng was about to move forward when suddenly, an angry roar exploded. "Stop!" Yi Tianlei walked out with an ashen face and scolded, "Tang Zheng, this is the Ye family. What are you doing? Are you deliberately offending the Ye family? Yi Tianlei had never used such a harsh tone to treat Tang Zheng. Even when Tang Zheng did not like him, he did not do so. Looking at Yi Tianlei, Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He braced himself and said, "Uncle Yi, how would I dare to offend the Ye family? It's just that when I wanted to come in, they just had to stop me. The Ye family does not welcome you. Didn't they make it clear to you? Do you really think that you can do whatever you want just because you're strong in modification?" Yi Tianlei asked loudly. "Of course not." Tang Zheng flatly denied, "I just can't wait to see Ding Dang." "You still dare to mention Ding Dang? You still have the face to mention Ding Dang?" Yi Tianlei was so angry that he could not restrain his anger as he asked. Tang Zheng was stunned. Yi Tianlei's reaction was too big. It was as if he was a different person. But he did not back down. He braced himself and said, "Uncle Yi, don't be angry. I know that I made Ding Dang angry. I'm here to apologize to her." "Apologize? Ph, where did you go before? You disappeared for no reason and now you're here to apologize. What do you think my daughter is, Yi Tianlei? You want her to come and go as you please? You want to settle this with a simple apology?" Yi Tianlei angrily asked. "Of course not. I definitely don't have such thoughts. I had some urgent matters to attend to before. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to see Ding Dang only today," Tang Zheng patiently explained. But Yi Tianlei did not have the patience. He didn't even want to say another word to him. He waved his hand in disgust and said, "There's no point in saying more. The Ye family does not welcome you and Ding Dang doesn't want to see you either. Also, I'm telling you, from now on, don't disturb my daughter. Uncle Yi, there's some misunderstanding between Ding Dang and I. It'll be fine after we clear things up," Tang Zheng explained. "Misunderstanding? Ph, there's no misunderstanding. Tang Zheng, I misjudged you. You're really an expert at playing with a girl's feelings. I've seen plenty of people like you. If you don't leave, then I'll beat you up every time I see you," Yi Tianlei threatened as he clenched his fists. Chapter 716. Yi Tianlei angrily glared at Tang Zheng and said, "Do you really think I don't dare to hit you?" Tang Zheng raised his neck high, his gaze firm, clearly expressing his attitude. "Fine, since that's the case, then I'll fulfill your wish." Seeing this, Yi Tianlei flew into a rage. "Catcher!" His fist clenched tightly. Su, like lightning, his large fist struck Tang Zheng's chest. He only used 50% of his strength. He thought that Tang Zheng would dodge, but he did not dodge at all, directly taking this punch. Peng! With a muffled sound, Tang Zheng was like a sandbag, flying backwards and fiercely crashing into a tree trunk. Catcher! The tree trunk snapped in half. Pu! Tang Zheng spat out a mouthful of blood. Although this punch was not enough to heavily injure him, he did not use his martial arts to block it. All of the power was completely absorbed by his body, so there was no need to doubt the shock to his internal organs. Why didn't you dodge?" Yi Tianlei asked. Tang Zheng wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "I already said that I would let you hit me. Why would I dodge?" Yi Tianlei was speechless, his expression changing slightly. Even though he looked angry on the surface, his heart did not feel good at all. He had always thought highly of Tang Zheng, as this kind of young elite was as rare as phoenix feathers and Chilean horns. He and Ding Dang were originally a match made in heaven, but who would have thought that in the end, he would hurt his daughter's heart and even cause her to fall ill? If it was any other parent, they would be angry. Inside the room, two pairs of eyes stared at Tang Zheng through the gap in the window. When she saw Tang Zheng injured and spitting out blood, Yi Dingdang's expression changed, her snow-white teeth biting her lips. Feng Xinyang saw her daughter's appearance from the side and faintly sighed, saying, "Little handsome brother is actually quite good. Just punish him a bit. If this continues, there will be no way to end it." Yi Dingdang resolutely said, "I have nothing to do with him anymore. What's the point? You two are really a good match. If you withdraw, wouldn't other women be taking advantage of you?" Feng Xinyang persuaded earnestly. "Humph, Wouldn't that fulfill his wish? Doesn't he like those women? Yi Ding-dang said in a bad mood. Ding-dang, I won't interfere with your decision, but don't blame me if you regret it in the future. Yi Ding-dang turned to look at her mother and said, You've been with Dad for so many years. Has he ever looked for other women? Feng Xinyang raised an eyebrow. If he dares, it would be strange if I didn't cripple him. Yi Ding-dang smiled bitterly. If Dad can do it, why can't he? This. Feng Xinyang hesitantly said, Everyone is different. Your father isn't as capable as him. Just because he's capable, he can flirt with other women? Feng Xinyang wanted to say yes. In today's society, how many successful people are loyal to one person? But looking at her daughter's expression, she took back these cruel words. Yi Ding-dang coldly snorted and said, Before, I chose to turn a blind eye. But I didn't expect that not only did he not restrain himself, he became more and more unbridled. I'm afraid he can't even count how many women he has by his side. All right, since you've made your decision, I won't persuade you. But we can't always let him cause trouble outside. Humph, I want to see how long he can cause trouble. Yi Ding-dang turned around and sat on the sofa, picked up a book and started reading. Feng Xinyang helplessly shook her head. She said in her heart, What's the point of torturing these two people? She glanced out the window and secretly said, Little handsome brother, why are you so muddle-headed? At this moment, Tang Zheng wasn't muddle-headed at all. His mind was very clear. He finally realized the seriousness of the situation. Yi Ding-dang was serious this time. People were most afraid of being serious. Once they were serious, things would develop in an unpredictable direction. Tang Zheng didn't want to see such a result. He decided not to leave. He had to see Ding-dang and explain things to her face to face. You really don't want to leave? Yi Tianlei was at his wit's end and asked again. Yes. All right, then you wait. I'll see how long you wait. Yi Tianlei angrily flicked his sleeves and left. He really couldn't do anything about Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng looked towards a small room in front of him. He could confirm that there were two people looking at him in that room. One of them had a very familiar aura. It must be Yi Ding-dang. However, he did not rush in immediately. He knew that Yi Ding-dang was still angry, so he would wait for her to calm down. He could afford to wait. As night fell, in the courtyard of the Ye family, a person stood upright like a piece of wood. The people of the Ye family pointed at him from time to time, but Tang Zheng ignored them. He only stared straight at the room, hoping that the moment the door opened, the figure that haunted his dreams would walk out. Who is this? Why are you standing here in the dark? Scram to the side. Suddenly, a delicate voice came from behind him. Tang Zheng frowned. Without even turning his head, he knew who it was. Yi Meiyu. Yi Meiyu had used a honey trap on Tang Zheng back then, but Tang Zheng did not react at all, causing her to fly into a rage out of humiliation, and she had always harbored a grudge in her heart. In addition, the good relationship between Tang Zheng and Yi Ding-dang's family made Yi Tianlei's position in the Ye family more and more stable, which made Yi Meiyu even angrier. Today, Yi Meiyu was in a good mood. A while ago, Yi Ding-dang was seriously ill, so she was secretly happy for a long time. Previously, she went to a party and hooked up with a little fresh meat. Only then did she go home in satisfaction. However, she did not expect that not long after she entered the house, she would almost bump into someone. Her good mood was immediately destroyed, and her big mistemper immediately flared up. Seeing that the other party was silent and did not move at all, Yi Meiyu felt that she had been completely ignored. She did not recognize Tang Zheng and thought that he was just a servant of the Ye family. She immediately flew into a rage and raised the bag in her hand to smash Tang Zheng's head, shouting, I told you not to open your eyes, I want you to know how powerful I am. Tang Zheng could withstand Yi Tianlei's fist, but that did not mean that anyone could hit him. Hearing the sound of the wind behind him, he grabbed onto the other party's bag and forcefully snatched it away. With a soo sound, the bag turned into a gust of wind and flew over the courtyard wall, disappearing without a trace. After Yi Meiyu's brain went blank for a short period of time, she completely exploded and shouted hysterically, You dare to resist? Men, Capture him and beat him up. When did the Ye family let such an ignorant fellow in? However, no one responded to her, and no one came to stand up for her and chase away Tang Zheng. Yi Tianlei had already given the order to treat Tang Zheng as heir and ignore him. Seeing that no one came to help her, Yi Meiyu was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She rushed to the front of Tang Zheng and forcefully swallowed the vulgarities that she was about to blurt out. She stared dumbfoundedly at the face that she would never forget even if she became a ghost. Tang Zheng, it's him. Why is he here? Is he here to look for Yi Dingdang again? Yi Meiyu's expression changed rapidly as she ridiculed, "Oh, I was wondering who it was. So it's the famous Tang Zheng, standing in our courtyard in the middle of the night. Are you here to be our Ye family's guard?" Tang Zheng glanced at her and said, "Scram." Immediately, the mocking smile on Yi Meiyu's face froze, her face turned from red to white, and finally to ashen, and said, "Tang Zheng, this is the Ye family, it's not your place to be arrogant and despotic." Tang Zheng coldly snorted and ignored her, only staring straight at Yi Dingdang's room. Seeing that she was ignored, Yi Meiyu became even angrier. Following his gaze, she immediately locked onto the room and said angrily, "I understand now, you're relying on someone to support you, right? I, Yi Meiyu, have had enough. Today, I want to see how Yi Dingdang colluded with outsiders and came to our Ye family to be so arrogant." After she finished speaking, she rushed to Yi Dingdang's door with large strides and smashed the door, causing it to shake violently. "Yi Dingdang, come out. You're getting more and more powerful. You colluded with outsiders and came to the Ye family to behave atrociously. Do you think that the Ye family belongs to you, Yi Dingdang?" Yi Meiyu complained indignantly. There was no movement in the room. "Yi Dingdang, I know you're inside. You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it. Are you a coward?" Yi Meiyu continued to smash on the door. Tang Zheng frowned and berated, "Yi Meiyu, this is none of your business, scram to the side." Hearing the word scram again, Yi Meiyu felt as if her entire body was on fire. She turned her head and glared angrily at Tang Zheng. She could not do anything to him, especially now that Tang Zheng's strength had increased greatly. Even Yi Xuanji did not dare to look down on him, let alone Yi Meiyu. However, she could not do anything to Tang Zheng, but she was not afraid of Yi Dingdang. Moreover, she had long been dissatisfied with Yi Dingdang. With the new and old grudges added together, she completely exploded. She crazily slammed on the door, almost smashing it apart, and shouted, "Yi Dingdang, get out here. Is it fun to be a coward?" Hearing his beloved being insulted like this, how could Tang Zheng just sit back and watch? He quickly rushed to the door, grabbed Yi Meiyu's collar, and berated, "Stop." However, Yi Meiyu did not stop. Instead, she felt even more angry and humiliated, and grabbed Tang Zheng's face with her hand, shouting hysterically, "You guys are working together to bully me, I'll fight it out with you guys." Tang Zheng grabbed her hand. If he was caught, the sharp nails would definitely scratch Tang Zheng's skin, and that would be extremely embarrassing. Seeing that she was making trouble for no reason, Tang Zheng's face darkened, and he snappily scolded her, "If you don't listen to my advice, then don't blame me for being impolite. Why don't you be polite? Are you going to hit me or kill me? Alright, Yi Dingdang, you actually colluded with a wild man outside to kill me, you really have gut." Yi Meiyu clamored, purposely framing Yi Dingdang. The commotion caused by the two of them was too big. All the servants of the Ye family were pointing at them from afar, but no one dared to come forward to help. This involved the open and hidden struggle between the two brothers of the Ye family. They did not dare to participate. Stop. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.